Welcome back, Naruto fans. I'm back with another exciting and action-packed video for you guys. This time you're going to see just how far money can take someone and why sometimes it really does feel like money is everything. So without wasting any time, let's jump straight into today's video. What if Naruto was exiled from Konoha and returned 7 years later as an unstoppable mercenary? Trust me, this one is going to be a lot of fun. So hit that like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Grab some popcorn, sit back and enjoy the story. Several years have passed since the destruction of the evil organization Akatsuki, formed by the most dangerous criminals in the ninja world. Thanks to the valiant efforts of the Konoha ninja, all these criminals were eliminated and peace returned to the villages. Of course, not everything is happiness for everyone. Naruto, in the battle against Pain, upon learning that Pain had killed his master, exploded in rage and unleashed the full power of the Nine Tails, destroying the Rinnegan wielder and all the other members of Akatsuki, including Madara Uchiha. Although he was able to calm down before harming his friends, the Leaf Village Council decided that he was too dangerous to keep in the village, so they decided to exile him to prevent him from harming anyone, as had happened with Sasuke Uchiha, who confronted the Nine-Tails Jinchuriki for interfering in the battle against his brother. Naruto and the Sharingan wielder fought, and it was Uzumaki who won by using the chakra of his inner demon. The council took advantage of this as an excuse to exile him. When the blonde with blue eyes arrived at the council room, they told him that he had 5 days to leave the village or he would be imprisoned forever. Naruto said nothing, although inside he was devastated. He went to his house, packed his things, and left immediately without saying goodbye to anyone. Besides, who would he say goodbye to? His great love Sakura insulted him and told him everything that came to mind when she saw the state in which the last member of the Uchiha clan in Konoha had been left, even though she had tried to kill her before Naruto defeated him. He had no energy for anything, so he simply left the village without knowing where he would go or what would become of his life from that moment on. Just like that, he left the village where he was born and nothing more was ever heard of him. His friends searched for him without success, and when Tsunade found out that the council had acted behind her back, she had a huge desire to beat them to death, but she controlled herself. After all, she didn't want to get her hands dirty with them. All the inhabitants of the village, except for Naruto's companions, Konohamaru and his team, Iruka, Ayame and her father from Ichikaris Ramen's, celebrated the departure of the blonde boy without caring about everything he did for them. They were happy to have Sasuke back among them, and the council absolved him of betrayal and he was reinstated in the village. 7 years have passed since the day the Kyuubi Jinchuriki was exiled. Everyone from that generation is now 22 years old, and many things have happened in Konoha. The Sand Village broke relations with Konoha after Naruto's banishment. The Rock, Rain, and Mist villages joined forces to destroy the Leaf Village once and for all. Sasuke Uchiha is the ninja with the best chance of becoming Hokage as soon as Tsunade retires. In the Hokage's office, the members of the former Team 7, Kakashi, Yamato, Sai, Sakura, and Sasuke, along with Ino, Shikamaru, Choji, Hinata, Shino, Kiba, Akamaru, Kurenai, Gari, Lee, Tenten, Neji, Anko, and a few Anbu, were discussing what they would have to do in case of an attack by enemy villages. These ninjas had the respect of every member of the village and were very famous and feared by their enemies. The northern wall is the one that needs the most surveillance. We should station more ninjas in that area just in case, since it's the furthest point from the village and we wouldn't realize it until it was too late, Shikamaru said, staring intently at the blonde Hokage. I think you're right, Tsunade said, putting a hand to her head. Tsunade-sama! Shizune exclaimed, entering the office in a state of great agitation. What's wrong? Tsunade said, a little annoyed by the interruption. He appeared. Shizune said, very agitated. Who appeared? Tsunade said, a little worried, while the other ninjas watched the scene attentively. Naruto-kun has appeared, Shizune said, staring intently at her teacher. Silence, that was what existed in the office at that moment. A general state of shock had taken hold of everyone present. Hinata, for her part, felt her heart beating so fast that she put a hand to her chest as her breathing became agitated. Way! Tsunade said, reacting. In the land of rice fields, some ANBU who were spying on some rock ninjas were attacked by them. They hid in a village, and the rock ninjas searched for them and began destroying the village to find them. Finally, a young man appeared and killed them effortlessly. One of the ANBU barely recognized him, Shizune said, trying to speak normally. What are you talking about? Kakashi asked, very interested. She told me he's changed a lot. He's very tall and his hair is red in several places. She found out his name and a boy from the village told her that his name was Naruto Uzumaki and that he was a mercenary hired by an arms dealer for his protection. Shizune said very seriously. Naruto-kun is a mercenary, Lee said, unable to believe what he was hearing. According to the information the ANBU obtained, nothing is known about him except his name and that he is very strong. He works for the highest bidder, finished his services with the merchant, and is now heading towards the land of waterfalls. But we don't know why, Shizune said, looking at the blonde Hokage. Inform the council immediately and have an interception team ready. I have an idea, Tsunade said very seriously. Yes, Tsunade-sama, Shizune said, stepping out the door. You all go and rest, I'll call you later, and don't say a word of this to anyone, Tsunade said very seriously. Yes, Hokage-sama, they all said in unison, withdrawing. Naruto, I wonder how much you've changed in all these years. Tsunade thought very seriously. The blonde opened one of the desk drawers and there was a box inside. She took it out and opened it. Inside was a picture of Naruto and Jiraiya along with Naruto's headband and the pendant she had given him. Outside the office, all the ninjas walked in silence, each one lost in their own thoughts and unsure what to say. What the Hokage's idea was upon learning that Naruto had appeared. Sasuke remained more serious than usual, and a half-smile formed on his face as he thought about how strong his former teammate had become. A mercenary, Naruto's profession is interesting, Sasuke said, a little thoughtfully. To become a mercenary, he must have changed a lot. I hope the flame of his youth hasn't been extinguished, Lee said, a little worried. I hope Naruto-kun is all right, Hinata thought, still walking and very worried. In record time the village council was assembled and Tsunade was recounting what had happened. After an hour of debate, the Hokage emerged with a satisfied smile. After a few minutes, Gari's team and the former Team 10, consisting of Ino, Choji, and Shikamaru, along with 6 Anbu, were in the office with the blonde Hokage. I have a mission for you. Go get Naruto and bring him back by any means necessary. The council decided to reinstate him to the village as an active ninja to help us in the war. This is the opportunity we've been waiting for to bring him back. Go get him and don't even think about returning without him, Tsunade said very seriously. Yes, Hokage-sama. They all said in unison and left the office. Each one went home to get their equipment and when they had it ready they headed to the village exit. When they all met up they set off for the land of the waterfall to look for their old friend. They ran with all their might, traveling as fast as they could until finally, after 2 days without rest, they reached the border of the land of waterfalls. From the land of rice fields to that place there are more than 5 days, and according to what the Anbu said, Naruto had just left that same day and should be arriving at any moment if he had gone at a normal speed and taken some breaks to sleep at night. They rested in that place and the next morning they saw someone approaching. They were wearing a genjutsu that Ino had performed, which prevented anyone passing by from seeing them. In addition, Neji was using the Byakugan to see long distances. That's how he saw someone approaching. It was a man, judging by his body shape. He wore a black cloak and a straw hat covered his hair. They couldn't see his face, and he was slowly approaching them. They tried to see his face but couldn't. The character walked past them and continued on his way. They saw the subject's back and saw 2 foxes staring at each other. And what caught their attention the most was a blonde and red hair sticking out of the hat. They followed him silently and without using chakra to hide their presence. They were all elite jounins, so their level was unbeatable. The stranger continued walking and reached a river where he sat near the bank and looked towards the water. Until what time are you going to be hiding? The man said in a rather serious voice. The Konoha ninjas were surprised to see that the subject had detected them even with such a high-level genjutsu. Even before I encountered you, I sensed the genjutsu. It seems your ninja skills have declined over the years, haven't they? Hyuga Neji, Rock Lee, Tenten, Yamanaka Ino, Nora Shikamaru, Akimichi Choji, and you, Maito Gari, in addition to those Anbu, the man said, looking in their direction. They were surprised. How on earth did that person recognize them? There was no other explanation than that that person was him. Naruto, they all thought at the same time, looking at the man with the straw hat. He was looking at them and had a lopsided smile that showed one of his fangs. It's been a long time, said Naruto, pulling an arm out from under his cloak, which was covered by a long-sleeved shirt that reached his fingertips, and his hands were gloved. The young man took off his hat and the Konoha ninjas were surprised to see their former comrade. Now he had hair that was golden and red, evenly distributed throughout. His eyes were blue, but they displayed a coldness that was frightening. His eyes showed no emotion whatsoever, as if they were dead. His face was more mature and displayed a somewhat sinister smile. To what do I owe the honor of this visit? It must be important for you to have come looking for me after all these years, Naruto said, still smiling sinisterly, his face showing no pleasure at seeing them. They emerged from their hiding place, each wearing the standard Jounin uniform, except for Lee, who was dressed the same as Gari, and Choji, who wore an identical suit to the one he used before. The ambush remained hidden in case something happened. Naruto, is that really you? Neji said, unable to believe his friend's transformation. Of course it's me. Who did you think I was? Naruto said in a somewhat mocking tone, but without losing that macabre smile that was beginning to scare his former friends. Is that really Naruto? He looks very sinister and terrifying. Ino thought, staring intently at the young man. Don't tell me I've changed so much since the last time you saw me that you don't recognize me anymore. Naruto said in a somewhat hurt but mocking tone of voice. You look very different. You don't seem like the same person anymore, Lee said, sounding a bit serious. You're right about that. I'm not the same. May I ask why you came here? Naruto said, his smile fading as he became serious. We have good news for you. Tsunade-sama convinced the council to allow you to return to Konoha in exchange for your services. And you will be reinstated as a ninja, Gari said, looking at the young man. The blonde man listened attentively to everything they said and then began to laugh. The Konoha ninjas didn't understand what was happening, but his laughter was somewhat macabre. Let me see if I understand. Do you really think I'm going back there? Who told you I was planning to return to that disgusting village? Naruto said, trying not to laugh any harder than he already was. What? Why don't you want to go back? It's your village, your home. Lee said, very worried and confused. What a home, a place where you can't sleep for fear of being killed in your sleep, and where everyone you know and consider your friends betrays you and turns their back on you. If that's what you're trying to convince me to come back with, you're way off track, Naruto said, his sinister smile returning. Come on, Naruto, that's not true. We never betrayed you. When we found out you'd been exiled, we searched everywhere for you. But we couldn't find you, Ino said, sounding a little sad. That doesn't interest me. Besides, I know they want me to come back because Konoha is at war, and I'm not interested in getting involved in a war for people who don't deserve it. If you'll excuse me, I have things to do, Naruto said, putting on his hat and starting to walk away. Suddenly the Jinchuriki realized that he couldn't move. Noro Shikamaru, you still have the bad habit of paralyzing people with your shadow, Naruto said listlessly. The Hokage said we have to get you here by any means necessary, and that includes force, Shikamaru said, very serious and considering all the possibilities. You're very wrong if you think this pathetic jutsu can stop me, Naruto said, walking away and breaking the Noro's jutsu, who couldn't believe what he was seeing. He dispelled my jutsu effortlessly, Shikamaru thought, terrified. Naruto-kun, please come with us. We need you, Lee said with a pleading look. Naruto, you're coming with us even if I have to drag you, Neji said, standing in front of the young man next to Tenten. The other ninjas, except for Shikamaru, surrounded the young Jinchuriki, ready to fight him in order to take him back to the village. It seems they want to die, Naruto said, smiling. But this time with a smile that sent a chill down everyone's spine. How much? Shikamaru said very seriously, drawing everyone's attention, including Uzumaki's. How much what? Naruto said mockingly. How much are you asking for to help us? You're a mercenary now, working for money, so tell me, how much do you want to support us in the war? Shikamaru said, a little annoyed. Always so intelligent, I wouldn't expect anything less from Konoha's #1 genius, Naruto said, looking at Noro. How much do you want? Shikamaru said, annoyed by Uzumaki's attitude. I don't know, it's a war, there will be many battles, many dead, wounded, days without sleep and without food. I will be attacked from all sides, besides not counting that I will have to see your faces every day. I would say about 20 million ryus, but since it's you, let it be 30 million. Said Naruto looking defiantly at the shadow manipulator. You're crazy. That's a lot of money, said Neji, very surprised by his former friend's attitude. Okay, Shikamaru said very seriously. The other ninjas of Konoha looked very surprised as they could not believe what was happening. Perfect, let's go then, said Naruto, approaching the young Noro. In this way the group of ninjas headed towards Konoha, While they were going towards the village, Naruto stayed behind the group, and during the whole journey he did not say anything. He just limited himself to following his guides. After 3 days they arrived at the entrance of the village. The guards let them pass but looked very intrigued at the mysterious visitor who came behind the ninjas. They walked towards the Hokage tower while all the villagers looked with interest at the newcomer who seemed familiar to them. Upon arriving at the tower, they went directly to the Hokage's office and told her everything about the mission. They entered the office, and the blonde and her assistant saw the group enter, followed by a man with a black cape and straw hat. "Tsunade-sama, as you ordered, here is Naruto," Shikamaru said as the Uzumaki removed his hat and stared blankly at the blonde woman who at that moment felt like crying. During some moments of silence in which no one moved, the Hokage finally reacted. "I'm glad to see you've decided to return to Konoha to help us," Tsunade said happily. "Actually, he refused to do it, and I had to hire him as a mercenary for 30 million ryus to get him to help us," Shikamaru said very seriously. "Is that true, Naruto?" Tsunade said, very surprised and hurt. "Indeed, I came for the money," Naruto said, smiling sinisterly, which frightened both women. "But that's too much money," Shizune said, very worried. "Take it or leave it, and make it quick." "I don't like this place," Naruto said, sounding a bit serious. "I'm going to speak with the council to ask for their permission. Until then, you can spend the night in the village, and I'll tell you their answer tomorrow," Tsunade said, trying to remain serious. "Okay, I'll stay at the hotel. I'm anxiously awaiting your reply. The less time I spend here, the better," Naruto said, putting on his hat and leaving the office. As soon as the Jinchuriki left the office, the blonde couldn't hold it in any longer and began to cry while the other shinobi watched helplessly and her assistant tried to comfort her. What happened to him? How did Naruto change so much? Tsunade said through tears. While that was happening, Naruto walked calmly through the streets on his way to the hotel, looking at the village. Disgusting village, full of treacherous rats. I'd like to see it destroyed, but if they're going to pay me, I won't complain. Besides, I can always kill plenty of ninjas in this war, said Naruto, walking slowly and looking at the houses. You should kill them all once this war is over, said a somewhat macabre voice inside the young man's mind. That's a good idea, Kyuubi-san. But no, I'm not going to get my hands dirty with these scumbags. They're not worth my trouble to kill. I'll just take the money and that's it. Besides, if they don't pay me, I have another idea. I can go to the other ninja villages and offer them my services in the war. I'm sure they'd be more than happy for me to help them exterminate this village. Naruto thought to himself, smiling sinisterly. That's a very good idea. That way you keep the money and kill these cockroaches. 2 birds with 1 stone, I like it. Kyuubi said, laughing maniacally. The blonde man arrived at the hotel, rented a room but didn't leave any name registered. Lay down on the bed and fell asleep while the village council was meeting deciding what to do with the young Jinchuriki and the role he would play in the war. 30 million ryus is too much money. It's ridiculous to pay that sum to someone like him, said Homura, the council elder, very annoyed. That's right. Who does that boy think he is? Charging us such a large sum of money for helping us in the war. He should feel honored that we went to the trouble of allowing him to return here, said Koharu, the elderly council member, very seriously. Perhaps we should consider it, Danzu said very seriously. You're crazy, Homura said furiously. Remember that boy murdered several members of Akatsuki and also defeated Sasuke Uchiha and almost killed him, Danzu said, looking at the 2 old men. That was 7 years ago. Uchiha has improved a lot and is our strongest ninja, Koharu said, a little serious. I know, and I also imagine that just as Sasuke Uchiha has grown stronger, he has too. According to the report, he has become very strong. Perhaps he has already mastered the full power of the Kyuubi. With someone like him in our ranks, we would undoubtedly win the war, Danzu said very seriously. That's true, but the amount of money he's asking for is too high, Homura said very seriously. I know, but we're talking about the survival of the village. We need your services, Danzu said, staring intently at the thoughtful elders. I'm afraid we have no other option. But first we must test how strong he is. If he's stronger than Uchiha Sasuke, we'll pay him. If not, he'll have to lower his price, Koharu said, not entirely convinced by the idea. Then I say yes, said Tsunade, who was sitting near the council members and had been silently listening attentively to everything that was said. Not yet. First, he'll have to fight several ninjas. If he wins, we'll pay him whatever he asks. Tomorrow there will be a fight, and we'll decide what to do with him then, Koharu said very seriously. Okay, Tsunade said, leaving the office. The next day, the The young man with blonde and red hair left the hotel for Ichikaris Ramen's. Along the way, he saw how the villagers looked at him, intrigued to know who he was, since he was still wearing clothes that covered almost everything. He arrived at the establishment and went inside, sat down, and ordered a bowl of ramen. The owner looked at him for several seconds, as he seemed familiar, but without being able to see his face, he couldn't identify him. She served him a dish, which the young man quickly devoured, savoring the flavor he had missed in his absence. At that moment, a large crowd gathered outside the restaurant, creating a huge commotion. "Did you hear that? Naruto Uzumaki has returned to the village," said a very surprised man. "Why did that monster come back?" A woman beside him said. "It seems the council asked for your help in the war," the first man said very seriously. "Please, Sasuke-sama is enough," said another very annoyed individual. "Remember that boy almost killed Uchi-sama," said an old man who was in the discussion. "I heard there will be a fight to see if they'll let him participate or not. Apparently, he asked for a very large sum of money to help us," said the first man, looking at the others. "That's the height of shamelessness. He tried to kill Sasuke-sama and now they want to pay him to fight in the war? As far as I'm concerned, he can leave. We're better off without him," the second man said furiously. "It's true, he should leave. I hope Sasuke-sama kills him in battle," the woman said, very upset and shouting. "So they want me to fight Sasuke, it couldn't be better," Naruto thought, smiling, but no one could see him because of the hat. "You damn fools," said the old man at the ramen stand. "Is something wrong?" Naruto asked, looking at the man with a slight surprise. "No, don't worry. It's just that it bothers me when people talk about Naruto like that. He helped the village a lot, and they kicked him out because they said he was too dangerous. I've known him since he was very little, and I assure you he's not a bad person. I'm surprised he decided to come back to help us. If I were him, I wouldn't have returned to this place for all the money in the world," he said to the old man, clearly annoyed. "I see, it seems she was very fond of that boy," Naruto said, smiling. "Quite a lot, and tell me, who are you?" said the old man, looking at the blonde man. "Just one traveler, if you'll excuse me, I have things to do," said Naruto, paying the bill and leaving the establishment. The blonde man went straight to the Hokage Tower. Upon arriving, he entered without any problem and went to the blonde woman's office. He knocked and entered, and she became a little sad when she saw him. Did they accept the proposal or not? Naruto said listlessly. "The council wants you to fight against several ninjas to test your skill level and see if it's worth paying you what you're asking," Tsunade said very seriously. "Okay, what time is the fight?" Naruto said in a fairly calm tone of voice. "In 1 hour at the stadium," Tsunade said, sounding a little sad. "Okay," said Naruto, heading towards the door. "Naruto, what happened to you? Why are you so cold? You weren't like this before," Tsunade said sadly. "People change. Life taught me the hard way that being good and kind makes people take advantage of you and betray you," Naruto said without looking at the woman. "But Naruto, I never wanted you to leave. It was the council's decision. As soon as I knew you'd been exiled, I sent people to look for you, but nothing. No one could find you," Tsunade said sadly. "I know. I left the village immediately. You know what it's like to have your whole life shattered in an instant? I left and tried to find a new life. I found it, and that's the life of a mercenary. I don't answer to anyone, and I'm paid enough to live comfortably, but I don't need more. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'll see you at the stadium. It's best if the ninjas who are going to fight me are strong. At least I want the battle to be interesting," Naruto said, leaving the office. "Naruto," Tsunade said in a soft whisper. After at least an hour, the stadium was packed with so many villagers who wanted to see the fight. Even though they hated Naruto, they knew he was strong and at least they would see a pretty good fight. And if they were lucky, they would see him dead. In the center of the arena stood the young Jinchuriki, still wearing his black cloak and hat completely covering him. Most began to boo him when they realized it was him, and he was just standing there waiting for the fight to begin. Kakashi, Yamato, Sasuke, Gari, Lee, Neji, Tenten, Sakura, Shino, Kiba with Akamaru, Sai, Aino, Choji, Shikamaru, Kurinai, and 10 more ninjas entered the arena along with 12 Anbu. The young man in the black cloak looked at them but didn't pay much attention. In the stands was Hinata, who refused to fight against Naruto and prayed that nothing bad would happen to her. Tsunade looked out from a balcony and watched the fighters. "You may begin," Tsunade said, looking at the blonde man. "Naruto, it seems you've become ambitious. 30 million Ryus to help us in the war doesn't seem excessive to you? It seems I'll have to bring you down a peg so you can see that you're still inferior to me. Sasuke said, looking at the young man with disdain. For someone who ended up with a broken arm and half dead the last time he fought me. You think you're so great? Ucha, Naruto said, a little seriously. This time it won't be the same. I'll show you that I'm superior to you, Sasuke said, a little annoyed. As you wish, Naruto said, still not moving. We'll finish you off, Uzumaki, said a ninja, lunging at the young Jinchuriki. The young man with blonde and red hair did not move from where he was. When the ninja was about to touch him, Naruto just grabbed his hand and threw him against a column, seriously injuring the ninja. I see he's very strong, Sasuke said, a little impressed. Let's finish this quickly, Naruto said, disappearing from the scene. All the Anbis and ninjas were hit at such high speed that they only saw themselves falling unconscious. Shikamaru turned around and received a blow to the back of the neck that paralyzed him. Ino was next, followed by Sai and Yamato. Choji launched himself at Naruto, spinning at great speed. But Naruto gave him a great kick that sent the large mass of flesh against one of the walls, knocking the big-boned ninja, Fat, out of action. Kurenai cast a powerful genjutsu as Kiba and Akamaru charged at the bicolored-haired youth. But he merely concentrated a little chakra in his body and released it in a burst that sent the dog and its master flying and dispelled the genjutsu. The black-haired woman was so astonished that she didn't notice when the blue-eyed youth appeared behind her and with a light blow to the neck knocked her unconscious. Ten launched a large number of weapons with explosive tags at the young Jinchuriki, who simply disappeared and reappeared in front of her. Grabbing her by the neck, he began to choke her. She lost consciousness as Sakura lunged at him to strike him. The blue-eyed youth saw her and stopped her powerful fist with a single finger, terrifying the spectators. The pink-haired Kunoichi grabbed his hand and slammed it to the ground, lifted it slightly, and with a kick, embedded it into one of the walls. Shino surrounded the blonde with his insects and gave them the order to attack the blue-eyed man, who didn't move, just like the insects. Naruto advanced against the insect tamer, and the insects moved out of the young man's way until he was standing in front of the bespectacled young man, who could do nothing as he received a blow to the stomach from the Jinchuriki, leaving him unconscious. Kakashi, Gari, Neji, Lee, and Sasuke watched in amazement everything the young man had done and were only thinking about how to attack him. In the stands, everyone remained silent. That being they called a demon had literally beaten their best ninjas. The cruel way he defeated the Hokage's disciple, despite her monstrous strength, frightened them. Kakashi created Kaidori and launched himself at the blonde boy who disappeared. Kakashi, up you go, Gay said, looking at the gray-haired man. The copy ninja looked up, but it was too late. The Kyuubi Jinchuriki delivered a spinning kick, knocking him unconscious. Guy, Lee, and Neji then attacked simultaneously. Naruto, however, was simply blocking the punches and kicks of the three ninjas without them even touching him. Spinning at high speed with one leg raised, the blue-eyed ninja kicked each of his three opponents, sending them crashing into the walls. They were left unconscious and badly injured. Sasuke stared at him, quite impressed by his strength and speed, and immediately activated his Sharingan to fight him seriously. I think it's just you and me now. I hope you make this interesting, Naruto said listlessly. Of course I'll make it interesting. I'm going to humiliate you, Sasuke said, looking disdainfully at the young man with two-toned hair. Brave words, let's see if you can live up to them, Naruto said, smiling, though the black-haired boy couldn't see the smile thanks to his hat. The last of the Ucha launched a fireball containing several shurikens, which missed their target as Naruto easily dodged them. From the black-haired man's fingers emerged threads that deflected the projectiles, directing them back towards the Jinchuriki. Naruto simply pulled out a kunai and threw it at the Ucha, but the weapon only cut the threads, undoing the attack. Sasuke launched a fire dragon, which the blue-eyed boy simply struck in the front, destroying the technique. Sasuke disappeared and reappeared behind the young man with a Kaidori, but Naruto created a Rasengan. Both techniques collided, but it was the black-haired boy who was launched into the air due to the power of the former Konoha ninja's attack. He recovered in mid-air and skillfully landed on the ground. The Sharingan user glared furiously at the young man who was still standing and waiting for the attack. Let's see how you handle this, Sasuke said as his eyes changed shape until they showed a star. The vast majority of spectators looked with admiration at the dark-haired man, as he was going to fight seriously. It seems the Ucha is going to fight seriously. It will be the end of Uzumaki, Koharu said, glaring at the young man with the straw hat. I'm not so sure about that, Danzu said very seriously. What are you talking about? Koharu said, a little confused by the comment from the leader of the Ambu's Root Division. So far, Uzumaki has only fought with Taijutsu and the Rasengan. Besides, it seems he's just toying with our ninjas, said Danzu, watching the battle closely. Amaterasu, Sasuke said, and a wave of black flames shot from his eye straight at the young Jinchuriki, who against all odds didn't even bother to dodge the attack. To everyone's surprise, the young man emerged from there with his clothes on fire, removed his cloak and hat, and revealed that he had not a single wound, showing his true appearance to all those present. His hair was a mix of blonde and red, evenly distributed, and since he wasn't wearing a forehead protector, several strands fell freely over his face. His hair was very long in the back. His clothes were very similar to what he used to wear. A long-sleeved black jacket that reached almost to his fingertips, black gloves that completely covered his hands, the torso of the jacket was orange, and a black t-shirt was visible underneath. His pants were black with orange stripes down the sides, and his boots were black and covered his toes. His face was much more mature than before, and he still had the marks on his cheeks. His eyes were so cold and blue that it seemed as if there was no trace of life behind them. Was that your best attack? If so, you're in serious trouble, Ucha, Naruto said, smiling maliciously. Of course not, Sasuke said, making a series of hand seals and launching a beam towards the Uzumaki. Naive, Naruto said before the lightning struck him. The lightning struck the former Konoha ninja directly, who disappeared in a cloud of smoke. A clone, Sasuke said, noticing the deception. Behind you, Naruto said, smiling maliciously. The black-haired boy turned around only to receive a powerful punch to his face and be sent flying against a wall. But before he hit it, Naruto appeared and gave him a powerful kick, sending him flying into the air. The Sharingan user rose several meters only to receive a blow from the blue-eyed boy, violently slamming him to the ground. Sasuke tried with great effort to get up, but the Kyuubi Jinchuriki appeared beside him and kicked him in the chest, sending him flying and crashing him into a rock in the arena. If he keeps this up, he's going to kill me, Sasuke thought, terrified. The young man with blue eyes approached his opponent with a slow but sure and threatening gait. I'm quite disappointed. What the hell were you doing while I was gone? While I was training myself to exhaustion to become stronger, you were just resting and doing nothing, proud of your strength. Naruto said, looking directly at the Ucha. I did train hard, but I don't know what you did, Sasuke said, quite annoyed. Seriously, why doesn't it seem like it? You've always been like this, thinking you're better than everyone. How does it feel to be lying at my feet without having managed to land a single blow on me? Naruto said, smiling maliciously. You're a... Sasuke said, furious. A what? If you mean a monster, you're right. But between us, who's the real monster? You see, if I remember correctly, you were the one who attacked us several times. The last time, you tried to kill Sasuke just because you couldn't handle your brother. And when I helped you, you went berserk and tried to kill us. Of course, since you're an Ucha, they forgave you for all that. But they didn't forgive me. Unlike you, they couldn't control me. I always did things my way, and that's why they exiled me. But that's not what bothers me. What really enraged me is that they tried to kill me just a few days after I left. That was unheard of. I agreed to leave without even questioning it or making a fuss. Now that I think about it, 30 million Ryus is very little money for helping them. With this low level you're at, it seems like the war is going to be just between them and me. I'm going to raise my price a little more. How about, I don't know, 100 million Ryus, that would be good, Naruto said, smiling maliciously. Are you insane? Homura said, completely furious. We would never pay you that kind of money, Koharu said, just as furious as her companion. Well, if they don't want to, I can still go to the other ninja villages and do business with them. I'm sure they'd be more than happy to pay me that amount to see this village reduced to ashes, Naruto said with a sinister glint in his eyes. You're a monster, Homura said, on the verge of exploding with fury. I know, that's what I've been told my whole life in this place, Naruto said, smiling. You're threatening to join the other villages if we don't pay you what you're asking for. That's blackmail, Koharu said indignantly. I call it business, Naruto said, smiling. You're a traitor, Homura said, very upset. With whom? Naruto said, a little confused. We should kill you right now, Koharu said furiously. You can try, but I can't guarantee you'll succeed. I stopped thinking I'm the best a long time ago, and I'm very aware of my strength. I assure you I can wipe out this village single-handedly in less than an hour without any of your ninjas being able to touch me. Naruto said, smiling maliciously. Damn it, Sasuke said, not even moving because of the damage he had sustained. All right, we'll pay you what you're asking for, but it will be at the end, when the war is over, Danzu said, looking at Uzumaki with interest. That's fine by me, Naruto said, smiling. No one in the stadium could speak. Not only had the battle been terrible for the Konoha ninjas, but the young Jinchuriki had demonstrated absolute superiority against their best ninjas, making them look almost like mere beginners. Tsunade and Hinata couldn't believe the drastic change Naruto had undergone. All he cared about was money, and he didn't care who he had to kill to get it. Now they would have to pay him an absurd sum of money to prevent him from finishing them off. At that moment, when everyone was staring in shock at the blonde man with red streaks, he looked in one direction and his face had a surprised and confused expression. When they looked in that direction, they could only see a beam of light that was heading directly towards him. Naruto simply positioned himself to stop that strange light and grabbed the object that was traveling at that speed, retreating several meters due to the speed and force with which it was coming. Everyone watched in surprise what was happening until they saw a small girl with blonde and black hair in the arms of the Kyuubi Jinchuriki. I found you, Dad, the girl said, smiling as she looked at Naruto. The crowd was completely silent. No one in the stadium could speak, and they could only watch attentively as the young man and the little girl he held in his arms. The girl looked to be about 5 years old. Her hair was blonde with black streaks. Her skin was slightly tanned. Her eyes were dark blue, and she had 3 marks on each cheek, just like Naruto, which undoubtedly showed that they were related. She wore a black dress and sandals, but her attire was far from ninja-like. It was more like that of an ordinary girl. Hinata felt her heart shatter as she looked at the little girl. If she was truly Naruto's daughter, then he had a family. All the hope she had held on to of being with him since he left was destroyed when she saw the little one. She felt an enormous urge to cry and run away, but her legs wouldn't move. What are you doing here, Shizuma? Naruto said, looking at the little girl, a little surprised. Tsunade was surprised to see that the red-haired blonde's eyes had regained that sparkle they had when he was younger and still held the little girl in his arms. I missed Dad so much and wanted to see you. Are you upset? Shizuma said, wanting to cry. No, of course I'm not upset. I would never be angry with you. It's just that you didn't expect me to come looking for you, and besides, your grandfather was supposed to take care of you. What happened to the old man? Naruto said, looking at the little girl. Nothing, Shizuma said, smiling sweetly. Oh my god. Naruto thought when he saw that smile. He did something, Kyuubi said, a little scared. I know, he uses that smile when he's done something bad. Naruto thought, swallowing hard. What has he done now? Kyuubi said thoughtfully. I don't know, but it's not good at all. I hope that old man doesn't kill me when I get back. I'm in for a rough time, Naruto thought, a little scared. At that moment in the land of the waterfall, in a temple in the mountains, a young woman dressed in a black kimono with brown hair and eyes of the same color climbed some stairs to reach a room, reached it and gently knocked on the door. Kyosuke-sama, would you like me to serve your and Miss Shizuma's meal? Said the young woman, knocking on the door. When he doesn't get an answer, he knocks on the door again and hears a kind of murmur. He opens the door and sees the room with no one inside. He hears the noise again and looks up, terrified to see a man dressed as a monk, slightly bald and with black eyes, chained to the ceiling and gagged. Kyosuke-sama, said the young woman, grabbing a table and climbing onto it to free the man. I finally managed to free the man who looked to be in a very bad mood. That girl, why did she have to inherit her father's temper and not my sweet daughter's? This is Naruto's fault, but when I see him... Kyosuke said, very annoyed and cracking his knuckles. How did a 5-year-old girl manage to tie a man that size to the ceiling? The woman thought, looking at the place where the old man had been chained up until a little while ago. Meanwhile in Konoha, Naruto watched the little girl who continued smiling with a smile that made her look like an innocent angel. Well, since you're here, let's get something to eat. They sell the best ramen in the world around here, said Naruto, scratching his head. Aren't you worried about knowing what he did? Kyuubi said, annoyed. Why bother? I'm just going to put up with the old man's lecture anyway. Naruto thought, closing his eyes. You're right, Kyuubi said, sighing resignedly. Yes, I want ramen, Shizuma said, laughing. Let's go then, said Naruto, walking towards the stadium exit with the girl in his arms. Nobody moved and they stared as if the most bizarre spectacle in the world was happening in front of them. Their eyes fixed on the young man and the little girl. Naruto has a daughter. He certainly didn't waste any time. Tsunade thought as she watched the former Konoha ninja leave. That girl can't be more than 5 or 6 years old and she used the fourth Hokage's technique. She's very skilled, Danzu thought, very intrigued. After a while, the ninjas who had faced the Kyuubi Jinchuriki were taken to the hospital to recover from their injuries. Meanwhile, news of the beating the Konoha ninjas had suffered at the hands of Naruto had spread throughout the village, as had the news that he now had a daughter and had received an extraordinary sum of money to help them in the war. This both annoyed and relieved them, since with such power they could win the war without much trouble, provided they didn't bother him, and he ended up killing them himself. At the young man's favorite restaurant, he ate and laughed with his little girl while the owner and his daughter, who had just returned from an errand, looked at his daughter with interest. "What's your name?" Eiichiro asked, looking at the girl. "Shizuma Uzumaki." Shizuma said, eating some ramen. "How old are you?" the man asked, looking at the little girl. "I just turned 5, Shizuma said, showing 4 fingers, then correcting himself and showing 5. "I see. And what's your mom's name?" Eiichiro said, looking curiously at the girl. "Her name was Hikari," Shizuma said, taking a bite of more ramen. "Was it?" Eiichiro said, looking at the young man. "She died when Shizuma was very young. She got very sick, and her body couldn't take it anymore," Naruto said, stroking the girl's head. "I'm sorry," Eiichiro said, a little embarrassed. "Don't worry, it's okay," Naruto said, smiling. "I'm glad you're okay, we were very worried about you," said the very happy old man. "Thank you, it's good to know that at least someone cared about me," Naruto said, smiling. "It's good to have you back, even if it's just for a little while," Eiichiro said, smiling. "I suppose so. Well, if you'll excuse us, I'd like to show Shizuma around the village. Maybe we'll find something interesting there. See you later," Naruto said, getting up with the little girl as they said their goodbyes and left the shop. "Where are we going?" Shizuma said, stretching out her arms to be carried. "First I want to visit the grave of someone very special to me. Then we'll go for a walk, okay?" said Naruto, picking up the little girl and putting her on his shoulders. "Yes, but I want some ice cream," Shizuma said, smiling. "Okay," said Naruto, walking towards the cemetery. As they walked along, many people stared intently at the young man and the little girl he was carrying in his arms. "Dad," Shizuma said, looking at all the villagers. "Tell me," Naruto said, looking at the road. "You used to live here, right?" Shizuma said, a little serious. "Yes, a while ago," Naruto said, sounding a bit serious. "Why did you leave?" Shizuma asked, a little curious. "There are always problems, that doesn't matter anymore, it was a long time ago. Besides, it's thanks to that I met your mother," Naruto said, smiling. A few minutes into the journey they arrived at a cemetery, and there the Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi along with his descendants arrived at a tomb where the name of the Toadsanin was written. "It's been a long time since I was last here, Uro Sennin," Naruto said, looking at the gravestone. "Was he your teacher, Dad?" Shizuma asked, looking at the grave. "Yes, one of the many I had, but the only one I loved like a father. His death was the worst thing that could have happened to me. That and your mother's death. At least, like her, I won't forget him," Naruto said, looking nostalgically at each day he spent with his perverted teacher. "You were the closest thing to a family I ever had. I can never thank you enough for everything you did for me," Naruto thought, closing his eyes as he began to pray. The little girl imitated her father and began to pray for the one he considered family. After finishing the prayer, Naruto started walking and they left the cemetery. A while later they arrived at an ice cream shop and Shizuma ate a large amount of ice cream. "Well, now I guess I'll have to wait and see what I'm supposed to do in this stupid war. Maybe they'll send me to attack enemy villages, or maybe they'll keep me here to defend them from an enemy attack. Whatever the decision, it'll be entertaining," Naruto thought, smiling. "Is something wrong?" Shizuma said, eating a strawberry ice cream. "Nothing. It's just that in a little while I have to go to the Hokage Tower so she can tell me what my job will be," Naruto said, looking at the little girl. "Another mission," Shizuma said, sounding a little sad. "Don't worry, it won't be difficult at all. I'll try to finish it soon, and with what I'm going to get paid, I won't have to do any missions for a very long time," said Naruto, stroking the girl's head as she giggled. "So you're going to buy me lots of toys?" Shizuma said, her eyes shining with excitement. "Of course," Naruto said, looking at the little girl with a smile. The young man and his daughter walked through a park as they watched the sunset. In the distance, Sitting on a bench, Naruto saw a young woman sitting in a chair that looked familiar. "What's wrong, Dad?" Shizuma asked, looking at her father. "I know that girl. That's strange, I didn't see her in the practice battle," Naruto said, looking at the young woman. "Is she a friend of yours?" Shizuma asked, looking at the young woman. "More or less, we weren't exactly close, but yes, we were friends, although she always fainted when I was around," Naruto said, looking at the young woman. "We greeted her," Shizuma said with interest. "Well, I don't think there will be any problems. She's a good person, unlike many others," said Naruto, walking towards the young woman. Sitting on a bench watching the sunset was the young heiress of the Hyuga clan, her gaze lost in the sky without looking towards any particular place due to the sadness that invaded her heart. So many years dreaming, waiting for an opportunity that destiny and life denied her, and she felt that her soul was broken. "Hinata, is that you?" said a man's voice behind her. She immediately turned around to see who was calling her, and her heart skipped a beat when she saw the cause of all her hardships and at the same time her longings. Naruto-kun," Hinata said in a rather low voice, her cheeks completely flushed red and her heart pounding wildly. "No, I can't feel like this. He already has a family. You have to forget him. Hinata. You must forget him," Hinata thought sadly. "Wow, you've changed a lot. I barely recognized you. I didn't see you in the fight," Naruto said, a little intrigued. I didn't want to fight against you," Hinata said, very nervously. "Well, thank you, I wouldn't have meant to hurt you," Naruto said, looking at the young woman. The girl's change was quite noticeable. Both her body and face had matured, but her face still retained that angelic and innocent touch she had as a child. Naruto looked closely at the girl's body and then at her face. As far as he could remember, she was the only one who had treated him the same and hadn't looked at him strangely after he discovered the secret of the Kyuubi. In the eyes of the others, he could see a little fear, but in her, he would swear he saw understanding. "Hinata, I'd like to introduce you to my daughter, Shizuma Uzumaki," said Naruto, pointing to the girl. "Oh, hello Shizuma. My name is Hinata Hyuga, nice to meet you," said Hinata, greeting the girl. "Hi, your eyes are very strange," Shizuma said curiously, pointing at the young woman's white eyes. "It's just that my bloodline barrier is like that. The Byakugan makes our eyes this color," Hinata said, looking at the girl. "You have the Byakugan, you must be very skilled," Shizuma said, looking at the girl. Thanks, but not too much. Your father is very strong, he always has been," Hinata said, blushing slightly. The girl noticed this and looked at her father with a small smile. "She's very pretty, isn't she, Dad?" Shizuma said, smiling. "Quite a lot," said Naruto, looking at the Hyuga girl whose face was completely red. "She looks a lot like Mom's picture," Shizuma said, staring intently at the dark-haired girl. "A photo? Have you never seen your mother?" Hinata said, very confused. "No, she died when I was very young. I don't remember her, but my father and grandfather have told me a lot about her," Shizuma said, looking at the young woman. "I didn't know, I'm sorry," Hinata said, very embarrassed. "Don't worry, it was a long time ago," Naruto said, smiling. "What happened to her?" Hinata asked, a little nervous. "Well, to begin with, she was very sickly. When I met her, she never left her house because she was afraid of getting sick. I came to this place almost 6 years ago to train. I was recommended this place because there was a monk who was very strong. I challenged him and fought him, and of course, I won," Naruto said, smiling. "My grandfather says he was the one who won," Shizuma said, looking at his father. "That old man is such a sore loser," Naruto said, looking at the little girl. "And what happened next?" Hinata asked, very interested. "Well, he was very tired, and I had to take him to his room so he could rest. Once there, I saw her. She was looking at me with a bit of fear. While he was unconscious, we started talking, and that's how it all began. The old man woke up 2 days later, and she and I had already become very good friends. He let me stay at the temple, and in return, I helped him. He was happy that she was always smiling since I made her laugh a lot with my funny stories. Even though she got sick easily, I couldn't leave her side. Little by little, I fell in love with her, and she with me. After a few months, we got married, and she became pregnant. Then Shizuma was born, but she died a few months later. It was very hard for me, but I promised her that I would take care of Shizuma with my life, and that's what I do. I live to take care of her, said Naruto, stroking the little girl's hair, who began to laugh at his touch. Her? What? What was her name? Hinata said, looking at the blonde man. Hikari Shirakawa, although actually her mother's surname is from a clan here in Konoha, Naruto said, looking at the Hyuga girl. Which one? Hinata asked, intrigued. It's a surprise, Naruto said, smiling. I'm hungry, Shizuma said, yawning slightly. Okay, let's get something to eat. Are you coming, Hinata? Naruto said, looking at the girl. And me, Hinata said, blushing. Of course, you're one of the few people I still consider friends, Naruto said, smiling. The Hyuga nodded and walked to the side of the girl who asked her to carry her, and she did so under the gaze of the blue-eyed man. Hinata, for her part, was grateful that he had recovered that special sparkle in his eyes. At that moment, near the border of the Land of Fire, several thousand ninjas from enemy villages were heading towards Konoha with a single objective: the complete and total destruction of the Leaf Village. Likewise, at the base of the Ambu route, a Danzu stood before several of his ninjas. That monster's daughter is very skilled. If we manage to capture her, I can control her father, and Konoha will be mine. Wait for the right moment, and until then, find out everything you can about her. I need to know even the smallest detail about them. This time, I'll have two very useful weapons at my disposal. I won't allow that stupid Tsunade or that useless Ucha to occupy a position that rightfully belongs to me, Danzo said, smiling. The blonde redhead, the dark-haired woman, and the little girl walked slowly through the village streets, heading only to the young mercenary's favorite ramen stand. But they were attracting the attention of the villagers who looked at them with intrigue and surprise. The three of them either didn't notice the villagers' stares and whispers or they were ignoring them very well. Naruto, for his part, was telling the girl about the grueling training he had done, all the places he had traveled to, and all the amazing people he had met. I'm talking about techniques so powerful that it almost seemed unreal and impossible for anyone to do them. But if he said so, she believed it. Hinata was amazed by what he said, but she couldn't help feeling a small pang in her heart when he spoke of his dead wife. It hurt to admit it, but it hurt to know that someone else occupied an important place in her beloved's heart. Shizuma was just in the girl's arms and watched the reactions of the two adults with curiosity, looking at the dark-haired girl and smiling maliciously. What are you planning? Said a slightly sinister but childlike voice in the girl's mind. Nothing, Shizuma thought, closing her eyes slightly and smiling like her father. Come on, tell me, I want to have some fun, said the voice inside the little girl's mind. You'll see, Shizuma thought, opening her eyes and watching them approach the ramen stand. The group walked to the ramen stand and before they arrived, the blue-eyed man looked back only to see three people approaching him at great speed. They were two men and a woman running quickly. Naruto Nishin, said the one who seemed to be the leader of the group. Konohamaru, Naruto said as he saw the three ninjas stop in front of him. Naruto Nishin, it really is you. I couldn't believe it when old lady Tsunade-sama told us you had returned, Konohamaru said excitedly. The young Jinchuriki looked curiously at the young man in front of him and then smiled sincerely. You've grown a lot, Konohamaru, Naruto said, smiling. That's right, now I'm a Chunin, very soon I'll be a Jonin, Konohamaru said, scratching his head. That's impressive, Naruto said, smiling. I know, Konohamaru said, laughing sheepishly. Is that your daughter, Naruto Nishin? Mogi said, looking at the little girl who was looking at them curiously. That's right, her name is Shizuma, Naruto said calmly. Hello, Shizuma said, smiling and raising her hand in greeting. We were going to eat some ramen. Why don't you come? Naruto said, looking at the group. Of course, the three ninjas said at the same time. The group arrived at Ichikaris Ramen's and there the young mercenary saw someone waiting right at the entrance. It was a ninja with a scar on his face whom he knew very well. Iruka-sensei, Naruto said, looking at the ninja. The group consisting of Naruto, Shizuma, Hinata, Mogi, Konohamaru, Udon, and Iruka were inside the ramen shop talking and reminiscing about old times, as well as telling each other what had happened to everyone since the blue-eyed boy left the village. The other ninjas from the village who had fought against the young Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi were in the hospital recovering from all the blows and injuries received from him. I can't believe how strong Naruto-kun has become. His flame of youth really burns brightly, Lee said, a little excited but quite sore. His skill and strength have increased dramatically. He's on a much higher level than us, Neji said, a little thoughtfully. Not only that, his speed and strategies, working as a mercenary must have given him a lot of experience. He knew how we were going to attack him and defeated us before we even touched him. What's more, he toyed with us. That's not the full extent of his skill, Shikamaru said, looking bored but very impressed. That's true, judging by the way he fought. It seemed like he was enjoying it even though his eyes didn't show it, Shino said, adjusting his glasses. Most likely, he was taking it out on us for what they did to him, Kiba said, wincing in pain. That's most likely it. Just look at how I left Sasuke and Sakura, Shikamaru said, yawning slightly. I beat them without mercy, Lee said, trembling slightly. I'm afraid he's changed, more than we imagined. That, and the fact that he has a daughter. I'm not sure how much, but he's changed, Shikamaru said thoughtfully. It's very likely, and one thing is for sure, he doesn't trust us, Shino said seriously. I wish there was a way for him to know that we never agreed with what they did to him and that we were always looking for him, Neji said, a little serious. I don't know if that will help much, Shikamaru said, sounding annoyed. What are you talking about? Neji said, staring at him. Well, he doesn't care about that. Even though we called ourselves his friends, he was always alone. He was betrayed by the village, and I even heard that the council ordered him killed. He doesn't trust anyone in the village anymore. I'm afraid the Naruto we knew is gone, Shikamaru said very seriously. You're right, Shino said in the same tone. While that was happening at Ichikaris Ramen's, the group split up. Iruka went to the academy and Konohamaru's team went home. Naruto and Shizuma decided to accompany Hinata home and chat a little longer. Naruto was a little intrigued by the girl, since he could almost never speak for her before because she would faint as soon as he approached, though he never knew why. Finally, they arrived at the street where the dark-haired girl's house was located. Well, Hinata, it's best if you don't go any further. I doubt your father would like to see you with someone who's going to bankrupt the village, Naruto said, smiling. You're right, Hinata said, her cheeks still flushed red. See you tomorrow, Hinata-chan, Shizuma said, smiling. Of course, Hinata said, looking at the little girl. Hyuga walked towards her house while father and daughter headed towards the hotel where he was staying. Dad, Shizuma said, looking at her father. What's wrong? Naruto said, staring intently at the little girl. Hinata-chan looks a bit like my mom, Shizuma said, smiling. That's true, Naruto said, a little thoughtfully. And she's very pretty too, Shizuma said with a mischievous look and smile. Yes, now that I think about it, it's true, she's quite pretty, Naruto said thoughtfully. The image of the girl formed in the mind of the blonde redhead until something caught his attention. Why are you saying so many things about Hinata? Naruto asked, looking curiously at the little girl. No reason at all, Shizuma said, smiling nervously. Really? Naruto said in a somewhat intimidating tone of voice and with a look. Honestly, I just thought she was very pretty. That's all, Shizuma said, smiling. Okay, Naruto said, a little thoughtfully. You know he's lying, right? Kyuubi said very seriously. Of course I know, it seems he picked up some of our habits, Naruto thought to himself. What's his plan? Kyuubi asked, a little worried. No idea, Naruto thought to himself, trying to prepare for whatever might happen. Aren't you worried? Kyuubi said, annoyed. It doesn't matter, whatever I do we won't be able to do anything, Naruto thought to himself, completely resigned. I suppose you're right, Kyuubi said in the same state. A few days slowly passed, and the village had grown accustomed to seeing Naruto back with his daughter. They couldn't help but look at him with some fear, but they knew that as long as he was there, they would be safe. The ninjas who fought against him left the hospital, and although they tried to talk to him, he didn't pay much attention to them. If he did speak to them, it was only briefly and never about personal matters. The only people who could speak with him were Hinata, Konohamaru and his team, Aiame and her father, and lately Tsunade and Shizune, with whom he discussed missions and the city's defense in case of an attack. No one else could approach him without receiving a gaze so cold and terrifying that it would make even the bravest tremble with fear. The relationship between Shizuma and Hinata was very good. They almost seemed like mother and daughter, which caught the attention of the blue-eyed boy who looked at her with interest. The Nine-Tails Jinchuriki and his offspring were having breakfast at the ramen stand, the only place in all of Konoha where they ate. Hinata was walking towards the stand and saw the young man's two-tone pants through the cloth covering the entrance. She took a deep breath and went inside. Good morning, Hinata-chan, Naruto and Shizuma said, smiling. "Oh, good morning," Hinata said, blushing slightly. "Have you had breakfast yet?" Naruto said, staring intently at the girl, who blushed a little more. "Why yes," Hinata said, a little nervously. At that moment, two ninjas sped past the ramen stand towards the Hokage Tower, and although they passed high above the establishment, Naruto sensed them. "What's wrong, Dad?" Shizuma asked, looking at her father, whose face was a little serious. "It seems there's trouble," Naruto said, sounding a bit serious. Which one?" Hinata said, a little nervous. "I think there will finally be some action," Naruto said, smiling slightly. In less than an hour, all the ninjas of the village and the ambu groups were at the main gate of the village waiting for the arrival of their enemy, who would arrive in a few minutes. The villagers were a little scared because, according to reports, the enemy army was very large. Around 10,000 extremely strong ninjas would arrive in a few minutes and attack the village. Hinata was a little worried but also somewhat relieved to see Naruto sitting in the park completely relaxed with his daughter in his arms. "Don't worry, Hinata-chan, I won't let anything bad happen to you," Naruto said, smiling at the dark-haired girl who blushed so much she almost fainted. The young mercenary looked towards the door and stood up, looking somewhat serious, then smiled sinisterly. "Time to play," said Naruto as his gaze darkened and turned reddish for a few seconds. The ninjas at the village entrance closed the enormous gate, and those on lookout watched in terror as a large mass of enemy soldiers in the uniforms of their respective villages approached them menacingly. Shikamaru knelt on the ground and, with a map of the terrain, began to plan a strategy to fight the enemy army. Several ninjas were nervous and waited for the plan to act until they saw Naruto arrive in the company of his daughter and Hinata. "Don't rack your brain, Shikamaru. This will be resolved in a minute," Naruto said, smiling calmly. "There are a lot of ninjas. I don't think you can fight against so many," Shikamaru said, sounding a bit serious. "We bet," Naruto said, smiling sinisterly. "I'd rather not. But if you think you can, go for it." "Good luck," Shikamaru said very seriously. "I don't need luck. You'll see this is nothing," Naruto said as he walked to the door. "Wait, Dad, I'll help you," Shizuma said, running after him. "No, you're staying," Naruto said, looking seriously at the little girl. "I'll go," Shizuma said, pouting. "No," said Naruto, crossing his arms. "Please," Shizuma said, making such a tender face and with teary eyes that it would make even the most bloodthirsty person feel pity. "I already said no," Naruto said, a small vein throbbing on his forehead. The little girl started to cry and her father started scratching his head. "I'll buy you a doll," Naruto said, looking at the girl. "Two and an ice cream," Shizuma said, wiping away her tears. "Done," Naruto said, smiling, and the little girl wiped away her tears. "I want the one that cries when you hit it and laughs when you tickle it," Shizuma said, pointing to a doll shop. "Okay," said Naruto, scratching his head. "You fell into his trap," Kyuubi said in the young man's mind. "You think I don't know? Whenever she wants something from me, she starts crying. I can't believe I always fall for it." Naruto thought to himself, a little serious. "Hinata-chan, can you stay with her for a moment?" Naruto said, looking at the Hyuga girl. "Of course," Hinata said, approaching the blonde with black streaks in her hair. "All right, time to earn my pay," said Naruto, approaching the door. The young Jinchuriki turned into air and appeared on the other side of the door, looking with interest at the massive number of enemy ninjas in front of him. "Well, at least this is going to be interesting," Naruto thought, smiling wickedly. "Yes, I'm eager to taste your blood," Kyuubi said, smiling sinisterly. The ninjas watched as the young man approached them and began to laugh. "How is it possible that they only send that idiot to fight against us?" said one of the ninjas, laughing. Naruto continued walking slowly towards them and watched as they laughed at him. "It seems they don't take us seriously," Naruto thought, smiling. "I guess we'll have to make ourselves known," Kyuubi said, laughing. Razengans formed in the young man's hands, quickly sprouting blades, which he launched at unstoppable speed. The ninjas saw the attacks but could do nothing to prevent them, as the attacks tore through the enemy shinobi formation from side to side, tearing apart and mutilating everything in their path. Coming out of the shock they had experienced upon witnessing such an attack, they glared with fury and hatred at the ninja with golden and red hair. "Damn it!" said a large number of furious ninjas. The enemy ninjas began launching attacks of lightning, earth and water against the blonde man, in addition to countless kunai and shurikens. All the attacks hit the blue-eyed man, who received no damage whatsoever. The enemy shinobi were astonished to see that their attacks had been useless. Don't these useless idiots know how to defend themselves with a chakra barrier? Naruto thought, looking at the group. It doesn't seem so, Kyuubi said, laughing. Let's finish this quickly, Naruto thought, pulling daggers from both sleeves of his jacket. The two weapons began to glow with a blue aura and, moving at unparalleled speed, went straight for the enemy ninjas. They tried to defend themselves, but they couldn't. The mercenary's speed was too great. The ninjas fell dead by the dozens. He stopped for a moment and, charging a large amount of chakra, released it suddenly, creating a huge explosion that destroyed a good number of the ninjas. He made a series of hand seals and created a great hurricane that sucked in everyone near him and lifted them into the air, then dropped them from a deadly height. The attack was accompanied by several futon raisin shurikens that annihilated everything in their path. Ninjas who tried to fight hand-to-hand with the Jinchuriki were mutilated by his daggers. Their swords and kunai were simply cut by his wind chakra-powered daggers. It's time to end this, Naruto said, biting his finger and summoning Gamabunta. Why are you calling me? Gamabunta said, looking at the enemy army. In short, Konoha hired me to support them in the war, and those ninjas over there are enemies. I need your help, Naruto said from atop the giant toad's head. Don't you think there are too many? You shouldn't kill them all, Gamabunta said, looking at the number of ninjas. It's possible, but this is a war, and the more of them survive, the worse it is. We have to show them that attacking Konoha means death, so they'll negotiate and end the war before more of their ninjas die, Naruto said, sounding a bit serious. I think you're right, Gamabunta said, exhaling a little smoke. I need your oil, Naruto said, making some hand seals. The gigantic toad unleashed a torrent of oil while the Jinchuriki launched a great beam of fire. Both techniques mixed and created a powerful beam of fire that began to incinerate the enemy ninjas. Inside the village walls, only the screams and explosions of the techniques could be heard. After finishing the powerful fire technique, the blue-eyed man looked in all directions to make sure that no one had survived. No one escaped. This was a truly precise strike, Naruto said, pleased. I hope the war ends now before any more ninjas die, Gamabunta said, surveying the state of the forest. The area surrounding the village was completely burned. There were no trees or anything left, only scorched earth and the melted remains of the enemy army's weapons. The mercenary with two-toned hair vanished in a gust of wind and reappeared inside the village. The ninjas inside looked at him with interest. What happened? Shikamaru asked, looking at the former Konoha ninja. I'm done with them. It was nothing, Naruto said, smiling. Some ninjas opened the doors and were surprised to see the state of the battlefield. Only ashes and scorched, smoking earth. Impossible, said one of the ninjas, completely shocked. What? Shikamaru said, staring intently at the Jinchuriki. I told you, I could handle them alone. By the way, if I were you, I'd send a message to those villages and tell them what happened. Tell them that either they surrender or this will happen in their villages, Naruto said, sounding a bit serious. Yes, that would be best, Shikamaru said, a little nervously. Relax, I'm not going to kill you unless you do something to make it happen, Naruto said, smiling sinisterly. Dad, I want my ice cream and my dolls, Shizuma said, running towards her father with open arms. Okay, let's go, said Naruto, picking up the girl. Naruto-kun, are you okay? Hinata said, a little nervous. Of course, they didn't even touch me. Do you want to come with us? Naruto said, looking at her with a small smile. Why yes, said Hinata, her cheeks slightly red. Let's go, said Naruto, starting to walk alongside the two women. The group began to walk while being the object of the gazes of all the ninjas who were there. The next day the news of the massacre of the enemy ninjas was on everyone's lips in Konoha and the Land of Fire. Several messenger birds were sent to the enemy villages informing them of what had happened and offering them a peaceful way out of the war. In the most luxurious hotel in the entire village of Konoha, a young man with hair as golden as the sun and as red as blood was sleeping, and on his chest lay a small 5-year-old girl with black and golden hair who was fast asleep. The old man woke up and saw his little daughter sleeping with such a peaceful face that it made him smile to see her like that. She looks like a little angel when she sleeps, Naruto thought, touched as he watched the little girl sleeping. It's a shame that when she's awake she's practically a miniature demon, Kyuubi said in the young man's mind. Well, we're not exactly the best role models for her. I think we're a bad influence, Naruto thought, smiling and brushing a strand of hair away from the child's face. I think you're right, Kyuubi said, laughing mockingly. She looks so much like her mother, Naruto thought, looking at the girl as the image of a woman with hair formed in his mind. She was a very beautiful young woman with long, dark black hair and shiny black eyes. She was incredibly beautiful and smiled sweetly. Hikari, Naruto said in a soft whisper as he closed his eyes. Flashback. In a temple in the land of waterfalls, a young man of about 16 years old was in a room that served more as a dojo, looking towards a half-open door at a young woman a little older than him, about 18 or 19 years old, who looked nervously at him upon seeing a man of somewhat fat appearance and with little hair on his head. Hello, said Naruto, looking at the beautiful young woman in front of him who was looking at him with distrust. The young woman with dark hair looked at the young man in front of her. He had blonde hair with a few red streaks and his clothes consisted of black pants with orange parts and an orange jacket with black sleeves and underneath this a black shirt. What did you do to my father? The young woman said, staring intently at the Jinchuriki. Nothing, we were just fighting and he fainted from exhaustion, Naruto said reassuringly. Who are you? The young woman said, still looking suspiciously at the blonde man. My name is Naruto Uzumaki. I'm just a traveler. I heard your father was very strong, so I challenged him to a fight, and then he fainted from exhaustion, Naruto said calmly, looking at the young woman. No, there's nothing wrong with it, right? The young woman said, looking at her father with concern. No, she's fine. It's just exhaustion. Don't worry. By the way, what's your name? Naruto said, looking at the dark-haired girl. The young woman looked at him for a few moments, hesitant to answer the question. But when she didn't perceive any threat from the blonde man, she decided to answer. Hikari Shirakawa, said Hikari, looking at the young man, still somewhat fearful. Can you tell me where to leave the man? I don't think you want me to leave him here, Naruto said, looking at the dark-haired woman. She looked at her father and then at Naruto and nodded as she fully opened the door, revealing a rather large priestess outfit that completely covered her hands and left no part of her body visible except for her face. Yes, follow me, Hikari said, walking into the temple as the Kyuubi Jinchuriki carried the unconscious man's body inside behind the young woman. They arrived at a room where the girl left the door open, letting the young man in. He carried the man's body to a bed and carefully placed it there. Thank you, Hikari said, looking at the blonde man, now much calmer. You're welcome. Well, sorry for any trouble I may have caused, said Naruto, leaving the room ready to go when he heard a noise more like a bang in the room he had just come from. He entered the room as quickly as he could and saw the young woman kneeling on the floor trying to breathe while she was coughing up some blood from her mouth. Seeing this, he ran to her quickly. Hikari, are you okay? What's wrong? Naruto asked worriedly, trying to get the young woman's attention. My pills are in my room, Hikari said, her face showing great pain. Which one? Naruto said, very agitated and worried. The third one on the right, Hikari said as she spat out a little blood. As fast as his legs allowed him to move, the blonde man reached the girl's room and saw a clear glass bottle with some pills inside. He grabbed it and ran to where the young woman was. Are these it? Naruto asked, very worried, showing the container to the young woman who nodded weakly. She took the bottle and pulled out 5 pills and swallowed them all at once. After a few minutes, during which she collapsed to the ground but was caught by the blonde man who had her resting on his chest, she began to breathe better as she fell asleep. When he finally woke up he was in his room and realized that it had gotten dark. He tried to get up and a damp handkerchief that he had on his forehead fell onto his legs. Are you feeling better now? Said a voice beside her. Instinctively, the girl placed her hands on her chest along with the sheet and looked at the owner of the voice. At first she was surprised to see a young man sitting in a chair looking at her until she remembered who he was. What happened? Hikari said, staring at him. I don't know. You fainted when I was leaving and then you got a bit of a fever. I brought you to your bed and gave you some water to lower your temperature, and now you're waking up, Naruto said as calmly as he could. Thank you, Hikari said, smiling. By the way, your father is still asleep, so tell me if you're hungry so I can make you something. You slept for several hours and lost quite a bit of blood, Naruto said, looking at the girl. Thank you, but I don't want to bother you. You must have things to do, Hikari said apologetically. Don't worry about it. I have nowhere to go and besides, I can't leave you like that when I'm sick, Naruto said, smiling, which made her blush slightly. Thank you, I think I'd like to eat something, Hikari said, looking at the young man. That's settled, said Naruto, leaving the room and walking towards the kitchen. Minutes later the blonde man returned with some fruit and gave it to the young woman to eat. At least 2 days later, the man who was resting in his room woke up somewhat dazed. "Father, it's about time you woke up," Hikari said, looking at the man who was waking up with a big smile. "Hi daughter, what happened to me?" The man said, looking at his daughter as he felt a little dizzy. "You were fighting Naruto-kun and you fainted," Hikari said, smiling. "Naruto-kun? Who is that? Wait, isn't that the boy who challenged me to a fight?" The man said very seriously. "Yes, after you fainted he brought you here. When he was leaving, I had one of my attacks and he helped me. He's staying here helping me until you wake up," Hikari said, smiling, which caught the man's attention as he noticed her cheeks were a little red. "Where is he?" the man said, sounding a little serious. "He's bringing some water from the river," Hikari said, looking at her father. "Good," said the man, getting up and leaving the room, leaving the girl a little surprised by her father's behavior. The old man reached the river and saw the Jinchuriki filling a large water tank that was too heavy for several people to carry. And then, once it was completely full, he lifted it easily over his head with both hands. The blonde man looked at the man who was staring at him, surprised by the great strength he possessed. "Kyoshuk-san, it's good that you woke up," Naruto said, smiling at the sight of the man. "You helped my daughter and I appreciate that. But I want to know what happened between you two," Kyoshuk said very seriously. "What do you mean?" Naruto asked, looking puzzled at the man's face. "Well, you and her, let's see. She never talks to strangers and well," Kyoshuk said, somewhat confused and unsure of what to say. "We're friends, and while you were waking up, I stayed to keep you company so you wouldn't be alone. Well, now that you're feeling better, I'll leave as soon as I leave this at the temple. I might be able to reach the next village by nightfall," said Naruto, walking towards the temple, followed by the man. "When I met you, you said you were going from place to place learning all the techniques you could to become stronger. You also mentioned that you were homeless and that's why you were constantly traveling," Kyoshuk said, looking at the blonde man. "That's right, I go wherever the wind takes me," said Naruto, watching them arrive at the temple. "Why don't you stay here?" Kyoshuk said, causing the young man to stop and almost drop the water tank upon hearing that request. "Are you serious?" Naruto said, very surprised and looking at the man who was staring at him. "Of course, there aren't many young people your age around here, and I'd like my daughter to have someone to talk to. Besides, my daughter can't go out much because of her illness, and that's why she doesn't have any friends. What do you say? Will you stay?" Kyoshuk said very seriously, to which the blonde boy remained silent for a moment and remembered the girl's condition. She must be feeling very lonely, Naruto thought, a little serious, and then looked at the man who was waiting for an answer. "I think I can stay a few days and see what happens," Naruto said, smiling. In this way the days passed quickly and without realizing it almost 6 months went by in which the relationship between the two young people became stronger and stronger and what began as a friendship took on greater intensity and the person who had this most in mind was the dark-haired girl who during the last few days had realized something that had never happened to her before. "I'm in love with Naruto-kun," Hikari said in a soft whisper, gazing at the full moon above the temple roof. "You shouldn't be here in this cold without this," Naruto said, appearing in front of her with a blanket. She was startled to see him appear like that and looked at him anxiously, wondering if he had heard her speak. "You? Did you hear? Did you hear what I said?" Hikari said, very nervous. "No, because, were you talking about me or what?" Naruto said, looking at her doubtfully. "No, not at all," Hikari said, laughing nervously and sighing with relief that she hadn't given herself away. "You've been very distracted lately. Are you feeling bad? I have your pills here if you need them," Naruto said, taking the bottle of pills out of his pocket. "No, I'm fine. Don't worry so much about me," Hikari said, looking at the stars. "What do you mean I'm not that worried about you? If something happens to you, I'll never forgive myself," Naruto said, staring at her. "Really?" Hikari said, blushing more and more. "Well, yes, of course. Are you my friend or not?" Naruto said, a little embarrassed and looking away to avoid her seeing the blush that had taken over his cheeks. "See, right?" Hikari said nervously as she realized what was happening. "We'd better go inside, it's getting colder and it's good for your health," said Naruto, noticing how it was getting colder and smelling the water, a sign that it was about to rain. The dark-haired woman stood up just as a strong breeze arrived and pushed her right into the arms of the blonde man who stopped her before she hurt herself. She blushed completely when she realized she was in the young man's arms, and when she looked at him she realized that he was the same way. Both seemed to be under a spell and couldn't stop looking at each other. The blonde boy, without knowing how or why, slowly brought his face closer to hers. The girl imitated him, and in a matter of seconds, their lips were joined in a kiss. The kiss was a little awkward at first, but after that came another and another, each new kiss increasing in intensity, and they could both feel something inside them awakening, yearning for more and more. They paused for a moment and looked at each other, unsure what to say, but one thing in their gazes was certain. They didn't regret what they had done, even though doubts were beginning to creep into the priestess's mind. Naruto, I love you, but this can't be. I'm sick, and remember, I don't have much time left. It's best if this doesn't happen again, Hikari said, looking away so he wouldn't see the tears that threatened to spill. The blonde man took her face in his hands and forced her to look him in the face. That doesn't matter to me. Whether you live a few more years or not, I want to be with you all the time. I'll never leave you. I just want to be by your side for the rest of your life. No matter when that is, Naruto said with a conviction that left the young woman speechless. She couldn't resist any longer and kissed him again. Time passed quickly, and a year later the relationship between them grew so much that they got married, and then the news of the young woman's pregnancy became known. At the time of the delivery, the young man with golden and red hair was like a maniac pacing from one place to another in the temple while being observed by his father-in-law who, like him, was nervous, and every second he was getting more nervous. After several minutes, a woman left the room, attracting the attention of both men who quickly went after her. How is she? Is she okay? How's the baby? Was it a boy or a girl? Are they both all right? Say something. Naruto said, grabbing the woman by the arms and shaking her like a rag doll. Let her go and wait for her to tell us, said Kyosuke, who, unlike the younger man, knew how to remain calm even though he was just as nervous as the other. Miss Hikaru-sama is fine, just a little weak from the exertion. The baby is also fine. You may go in to see them, but please remain calm as they both need rest, said the nurse, stroking the arm that the Jinchuriki had almost broken with his grip. Both men enter the room and see the dark-haired woman lying on the bed, and next to her a small newborn baby girl who had her eyes open, curiously looking at a small lit candle. They approached to get a better look, and the blonde man was overjoyed to see the baby with 3 marks on each cheek. When she saw him, she stretched out a hand to grab him. He reached out his hand to the little one, and as soon as she touched his hand, she felt something she had never felt before in her life. My daughter, Naruto said in a soft whisper that no one in the room could hear. At that moment he finally knew what it was like to have a family. Before it was just a word he had heard and whose meaning he knew, but now he knew firsthand what it truly meant. A few tears escaped his eyes and he wiped them away immediately and approached the woman who was looking at him with a smile despite how agitated she was. The days passed slowly for the young father as his wife still hadn't recovered. In fact, she got worse every day. To pay for her increasingly expensive medicine, he started working any job he could find in a nearby town. He met some mercenaries who worked for the feudal lord, and after demonstrating his skills, he managed to get hired. He carried out all kinds of missions, and with his earnings, he bought the medicine his wife needed, but unfortunately, her health didn't improve. Although the medication kept her stable, her physical condition deteriorated day by day. Finally, after an almost eternal 4 months, she couldn't take it anymore and her body collapsed. The time had come, and in the room where she was, there was Naruto along with his father-in-law and a young woman with brown hair who had started working at the temple to take care of the little girl they had named Shizuma when her father was away on a mission. The Kyuubi Jinchuriki held his little daughter in his arms as he felt his heart and soul shatter at the sight of his wife's body covered by the white sheet. He felt an overwhelming urge to cry, something he had never experienced before, but upon seeing the baby, he stopped. He had lost his wife, but he had his daughter, and from that moment on, her was his sole concern. He would live only to make her happy. That was his new goal, his sole purpose in life, and he would fulfill it until the very end. End of flashback. The young man with two-toned hair opened his eyes and saw that his little daughter was still asleep and approached her, giving her a small kiss on the forehead. To think that I'm still a mercenary so I can buy him everything he needs. Well, I don't regret anything, Naruto thought, a little seriously. Yeah, well, we had to work at something. Besides, there aren't many jobs a former ninja can do, Kyuubi said, chuckling a little. Well, now I remember we have to meet Hinata-chan at Ichikaru's Ramen's at noon and it's already like 11 o'clock. I'd better wake Shizuma up, Naruto thought, looking at the little girl while pinching her nose with his fingers. You know, You've been very friendly with that girl lately, Kyuubi said in a somewhat serious tone of voice. It's because Shizuma likes her and is growing fond of her, Naruto thought, smiling maliciously as he watched the little girl struggle to breathe and fidget until she suddenly stood up. Shizuma looked at her father, who couldn't hold back his laughter, and started laughing while the girl puffed out her cheeks in anger at the way he stood up. That was because of yesterday, Naruto said, to which the little girl smiled maliciously. He's going to get his revenge, Kyuubi said, a little fearful. I know, it's not fun, Naruto thought, smiling. No wonder that girl is like that, with the example she has. This boy is right about something. We're a bad influence on her, Kyuubi thought, laughing. Remember we agreed to meet Hinata-chan at the ramen stand? Naruto said, looking at the little girl who stared at him intently, remembering that. That's true, Shizuma said, rushing into the bathroom, very flustered. After they both took a bath, they went to their favorite restaurant and saw the young woman with bluish-black hair waiting for them at the entrance. Have you been waiting for us long? Naruto asked as he approached her. No, I just got here, Hinata said, her cheeks flushed red. Ramen! Shizuma shouted at the top of her lungs, interrupting the two adults. I think I should teach them manners, Naruto thought, looking at the little girl with a drop of sweat on his forehead. They couldn't teach it to you, and you think you can teach it to her? Kyuubi thought to the blonde boy, who remained thoughtful until he sighed resignedly. Let's go in, said Naruto, looking at the Hyuga girl who nodded, blushing slightly. The three of them entered the restaurant where father and daughter ate so much that it seemed as if they had never eaten a bite in their lives. By the time Hinata finished her first dish, the Jinchuriki had at least 20 dishes and his daughter was finishing her 12th. In the end, they paid and went for a walk around the area. Naruto-kun, said a female voice from behind the group. The three looked at the owner of the voice and saw a young dark-haired woman with a piglet in her hands approaching them. What's wrong? Naruto said, stopping and waiting to see what the woman wanted. Tsunade-sama wants to see you. A message arrived from the enemy villages, Shizune said, sounding a little serious. In a matter of minutes the group arrived at the Hokage tower where everyone stared at them in shock. They reached the office of the blonde Hokage and she sighed upon seeing them as she prepared to give them the news. Is something wrong, Tsunade-chan? Naruto said, sounding a bit serious. The ninja villages have surrendered. They ask to end the war as soon as possible, Tsunade said, sounding both serious and somewhat sad. Well, that means they don't need me anymore, Naruto said, a little thoughtful. As you requested, the council is already gathering your payment, but since it's a large sum, we'll need a couple of days to complete everything, Tsunade said very seriously. I hope you won't be too long. I have things to do, and Shizuma's grandfather must be upset, and I need to calm him down, said Naruto, looking at the little girl whose face had a tender expression that would melt the heart of even the most bloodthirsty person. Hinata, for her part, was completely paralyzed. How could she have been so stupid? He was just passing through and would leave again. She would never see him again. In a panic attack, she ran out of the room, leaving those present dismayed. Hinata-chan, Naruto said as he saw the kunoichi run out of the office. What happened to her? Shizuma asked, a little worried. I think she was a little sad because you're leaving, Tsunade said with a somewhat serious expression. I guess I need to talk to her. Let's go, Shizuma, said Naruto, looking at the girl and getting up from his chair. Your dad should go. I want to ask Granny Tsunade something, Shizuma said, looking at the blonde. What are you going to ask him? Naruto said, confused. Women's stuff, Shizuma said, smiling. Okay, Naruto said, not entirely convinced by the idea. Tsunade-chan, please take good care of her, he said, leaving the office. As soon as the Jinchuriki left the office, the little girl looked at the two women with a malicious smile. The former Konoha ninja walked through the village streets looking for the dark-haired girl until he saw her crying in a park. This caused him a feeling he didn't understand, but that seemed familiar. He approached her slowly. Hinata-chan, Naruto said as he approached her. When she saw him, she quickly dried her tears but hid her face between her legs so he wouldn't see her like that. Are you all right? Naruto asked, a little worried and very puzzled by the young ninja's attitude. Why yes, Hinata said, trying to make her voice sound as convincing as possible. So why are you crying? Is it because Shizuma and I are leaving in a few days? Naruto said as he sat down next to the kunoichi. It's just that I thought you were staying. I forgot you were leaving, Hinata said sadly, tears still streaming down her face. Remember that I was exiled from the village. I was only brought here because of the war, and now that it's over, I'm no longer needed. I must leave with my daughter. My home is no longer here, Naruto said, somewhat seriously, and he could feel that when he finished speaking, the young woman cried even harder. The blonde-haired man looked at her, biting his lip as he watched her get worse instead of calming down. He didn't understand why she was crying, why it hurt him so much to see her like this. He stood up and stood in front of her, took her face in his hands, and forced her to look at him. The young man with two-toned hair saw the great pain in the girl's white eyes and how those tears were running down her cheeks. Does it hurt you that much that we're leaving? Naruto said, looking into her face. Hinata said, but she didn't know what to say because she was so nervous and sad. You know, if it weren't crazy, I'd think you didn't want me to leave because you're in love with me, Naruto said thoughtfully, causing the Hyuga girl to look at him in fear. But that's impossible, since as far as I remember, you've always acted like this, so for that to be true, you'd have to have been in love with me since we were kids, he said, scratching his head at his own comment. When he looked at the girl, she was extremely nervous and frozen. The young man with two-toned hair was completely stunned by what he had just discovered and could not react. The Hyuga tried to flee, but the young man reacted and caught her, trapping her between the tree and his arms. Is it true, Hinata-chan? Tell me, is it true? Have you really been in love with me since we were kids? Naruto said, staring intently at the girl. Hinata was completely nervous. The young man's gaze showed how anxious he was for an answer. He had realized everything and was waiting for a response. Why yes, Hinata said, closing her eyes and avoiding looking at the young man's face. Ever since we were children, you were always alone. You never gave up. You always smiled, even if it was a fake smile. You always tried to make sure everyone was okay, even if you suffered. That's what I liked about you. I always wanted to tell you what I felt, but I never had the courage to tell you. The young woman said, very nervous and with her face completely red. So that's why she was always nervous when I approached her, Naruto thought, feeling like a complete idiot as he realized so many things. She lowered her head, very embarrassed, and that's when she felt the blonde boy lift her face and gently wipe away her tears. She kept her eyes closed, and that's when she felt pressure on her lips. She opened her eyes and was completely stunned to realize that Naruto was kissing her. He couldn't react for a few seconds as his mind was completely in shock, but when he did, he closed his eyes and his hands clung tightly to the Jinchuriki's jacket. The kiss was calm and gentle, completely tender and just as the girl had dreamed so many times. When their lips met, she was trapped in the arms of the young Jinchuriki. Naruto could feel her trembling in the embrace he held her in as he stroked her back. She was still trapped in the embrace and felt completely protected and happy, although doubt and worry remained deep in her heart. I know this might sound a little selfish of me, but why don't you come with me and Shizuma to the village hidden in the waterfall? She cares about you, and I'm sure she won't mind us. Naruto said, his cheeks slightly red, feeling his heart pounding uncontrollably after several years. Yes, I do want to, Hinata said, hugging the young man even tighter. While the couple was embracing in the park behind a tree were three silhouettes who had seen everything without realizing it. Near the ground was Shizuma kneeling. A little higher up was Shizune with her pig and above her was Tsunade who was watching everything with a big smile. The reason I included Shizuma's mother in this phase because I felt she deserved a more prominent role, as I imagined someone must be curious to know what she looks like. At least, I hope so. Thank you to everyone who listen our story and leaves messages. They motivate me to keep going. Now let's continue. Hinata was leaning against a tree with her back to it, hugging Naruto who was kissing her passionately. After the initial kiss and the young woman's decision to leave with the blonde with red streaks, her daughter had kissed several more times, and each new kiss was more passionate and daring than the last. Little by little they were becoming addicted to each other's lips and time seemed to have stopped for the couple. I have to go get Shizuma. I left her with Tsunade-chan and she must be bored, Naruto said, ending the kiss but still holding the young woman in his arms. The Hyuga was hugging the blonde man's body and had her head resting on his chest, feeling the strong beating of the young Jinchuriki's heart and feeling the warmth of his body. What? How do you think Shizuma-chan will take this? Hinata said, a little nervous about the little girl's possible reaction. I don't think he'll have any problem with that. After all, he likes you a lot, Naruto said, still hugging the young woman. Besides, now that I think about it, ever since we got here she's been talking a lot about Hinata-chan. Could it be that she was planning all of this? Naruto thought, a little serious. That's most likely it. Remember, She's been planning something for a while now. We don't know what it is, but it's possibly this. Who knows what's going through that girl's mind? Kyuubi said very seriously. Well, that doesn't matter anymore. Naruto thought as he took the Hyuga's face in his hands and gave her another kiss. While the couple continued kissing, the three spies retreated to the Hokage Tower. The blonde and the black-haired woman watched the little girl who was very excited. I'll have a new mom and dad won't be alone anymore, Shizuma said, smiling. Tsunade-sama, don't you think Naruto-kun is being a bit drastic about going to the land of waterfalls with Hinata? How do you think Hayashisa-san will take it when he finds out? What will happen with the council? If Hinata leaves, they'll declare her a rogue ninja. Not to mention that because she possesses the Byakugan, they won't let her leave easily. This will cause a lot of problems, Shizune said, very worried and looking at the blonde Hokage. You know Naruto will do whatever it takes to achieve his goals. Don't worry, he'll find a solution. And with the display of power he showed by single-handedly wiping out the enemy army in such a short time, I doubt anyone is crazy enough to try and oppose him. Relax, he can achieve anything he wants, Tsunade said very seriously. After a couple of minutes, the young couple went together to the Hokage Tower to look for the blonde man's little daughter. As they entered, the two women and the blonde with black streaks stared at them with a big smile as they entered holding hands. She knows something, Naruto thought, seeing the little girl's smile. That's for sure, Kyuubi said in the young man's mind, very seriously. Hi Dad, you managed to calm Hinata-chan down, Shizuma said, smiling sweetly. He knows it, Naruto thought, seeing that smile. Can we talk for a moment, just you and me? Naruto said, looking intently at his daughter. Could you wait here a little while, Hinata-chan? He asked, glancing at the young woman with bluish-black hair, who nodded, blushing slightly, as father and daughter left the Konoha leader's office. The Hokage and her assistant exchanged knowing glances while looking maliciously at the Hyuga, who looked at them somewhat saddened. All right Hinata, tell me, are you two dating now? How does he kiss? Tsunade said, staring intently at the pearl-eyed girl who blushed deeply upon receiving the questions. Hinata said, very nervous and extremely blushing. Don't try to deny it. We saw everything. You two looked so cute together, Shizune said, standing next to the voluptuous woman. While that was happening in the hallway, Shizuma was sitting in a chair, playfully moving her legs while Naruto looked at her indecisively. What do you think of Hinata-chan? Naruto said, staring intently at the little girl who was looking at him curiously. Why? Shizuma said, smiling. She's making it difficult for me, Naruto thought, looking at the little girl. I just want to know, Naruto said, looking at the little girl. Isn't it more likely that you like her and want to know if I want her to be my new mom? Shizuma said, smiling maliciously. Damn, just as I feared, she already knew, Naruto thought, looking at the little girl in dismay. Little clever girl, only 5 years old and she's very intelligent. She's quite a genius, Kyuubi said, quite impressed. Well, since you're putting it that way, what do you think? Naruto said, looking attentively at his daughter. If Dad is happy with her, Shizuma is happy. Dad has been alone since Mom died, and that's not good. I want Dad to be happy and not alone anymore, Shizuma said, smiling. Shizuma, thought Naruto as he approached the little girl and hugged her. The blonde man took the little girl and carried her into the office, where they saw the blonde Hokage drinking a large glass of sake while her assistant laughed a little at Hinata, who looked like an erupting volcano because of how red she was. I missed something, Naruto thought as he watched the scene. By the next day, the news of the Hyuga clan heiress's courtship with the Kyuubi's Jinchuriki was on everyone's lips in the village. It was still a mystery who started the gossip, but at that moment the whole village knew about it and everyone was talking about it. There was a certain commotion in the Hyuga clan mansion. The tension was palpable, and most of those walking through the house couldn't help but look towards the door of the family dojo where Hayashi Hyuga and Hinata were gathered. The door suddenly opened, nearly giving a young woman from the secondary branch a heart attack. She watched in dismay as the clan leader walked out of the room with his eyes closed, heading towards the mansion's exit. Seconds later, his daughter emerged, looking somewhat dismayed and with a face that reflected a bit of confusion. 2 members of the branch family ran to where Hayashi was to accompany him, as did Neji, who went directly to the clan leader. Hayashi-sama, what's wrong? Neji asked as he stood near his uncle. I must speak with the Hokage immediately, Hayashi said, heading towards the Hokage tower. And so, in silence, the Hyuga group continued their journey toward the tower. At that moment, Hinata entered her room and sat on her bed, gazing out the window. "Sister," said a young woman with brown hair who entered the room and looked attentively at the blue-haired woman. "What's wrong, Hanabi?" Hinata asked, looking at the newcomer. "I just wanted to know how it went with our father. What he said to you," Hanabi said, approaching the young woman. "Well, Hinata said, a little thoughtful, looking at her younger sister. Meanwhile, in the village leader's tower, the legendary medical Sannin sat in her chair, next to her her faithful assistant, and in front of them Hayashi Hyuga looked at them seriously. "What's wrong, Hayashi? Why do you want to talk to me like this out of the blue?" Tsunade said, looking attentively at the leader of the most powerful clan in the village. "I'll be brief. I demand the immediate banishment of Hinata Hyuga. I want her to leave this village as soon as possible," Hayashi said very seriously, surprising the women. "Exile? But how? Why?" said Shizune, very surprised and somewhat annoyed with the man. The blonde looked at him for a few moments, somewhat dismayed, but then she put on a very serious face and stared intently at the man in front of her. "I can know the reason for this decision," Tsunade said without showing any emotion, an act that caught her assistant's attention. "The reasons are something that concerns only and exclusively the Hyuga clan," Hayashi said, staring intently at the woman with golden hair and a well-developed figure. "I understand. I'll tell the council your decision for their approval," Tsunade said, looking at Hyuga. "There's no need for approval, here it is," Hayashi said, taking out a letter and handing it to the woman. "There's an order for her immediate exile. There's no room for discussion," he said gravely, rising from his chair and leaving the room. As soon as the Hyuga clan leader left through the door and closed it, the blonde gave a deep sigh while massaging her head. "Tsunade-sama, what do you plan to do?" Shizune said, looking at the blonde. "Well, I'll accept his request. After all, he's the leader of the most powerful clan in Konoha, and no one, not even the council members, can interfere with the decisions he makes regarding the Hyuga clan. So, Hinata will have to be exiled," Tsunade said, pouring herself some sake. "But then Hinata," Shizune said, looking at her leader with a hint of worry. "Shizune, if Hinata is exiled from Konoha, she can freely leave with Naruto without any consequences whatsoever," Tsunade said, taking a sip of liquor. "I understand," Shizune said, a little calmer now, as she approached the blonde. "Tsunade-sama has some work to do," she said, taking the sake bottle and glass from the blonde's hands. "Bitter," Tsunade whispered softly as she signed the letter given to her by the Hyuga clan leader and picked up several folders. Hours later, Naruto's old friends were gathered at the restaurant and talking amongst themselves. "Hinata and Naruto are dating. They say they were seen kissing passionately in the park," Ino said, a little excited. "Well, yes, and I heard that she's going to leave with him," Tenten said, smiling. "Now that's love. I'm so moved." "The flame of youth burns brightly in them both," Lee shouted, tears streaming down his face as a great number of flames engulfed him, though they didn't burn him. Everyone stared at him as if he were insane. "They are both very troublesome," Shikamaru said, taking a cigarette and lighting it. "Would you mind? You can't smoke here." "I don't know how Temri puts up with you doing it," Ino said, looking at Noro as she took the cigarette from him. "Speaking of her, she sent me a message with a hawk last night when I told her Naruto was in the village," Shikamaru said in a somewhat serious tone of voice. "What was he saying?" said Kiba, who was sitting next to the strategist. "Naruto and Gaara have been talking about Naruto's daughter becoming a sand ninja," Shikamaru said, sounding a bit serious. "I figured as much. That girl has something strange about her. The amount of chakra she has is abnormally high, not to mention that the technique she used when she arrived was the technique of the fourth Hokage, and I don't think she's more than 5 years old. Looking at it from a normal perspective, she's a true genius," said Shino, who was in a corner looking out the window at an anthill near a tree. "That's exactly what Gaara told Temari. Naruto has been training his daughter, and apparently she's very good. When she grows up, she's going to be a fearsome ninja, and I know that both the Sand Village and the Waterfall Village want her on their side," Shikamaru said very seriously. "That's impressive, for someone who's Naruto's daughter," said Sasuke, who had remained silent until now. "Come on, Sasuke-kun. Naruto has become very strong. He almost killed us in that fight, and it didn't take much effort. Think about what he did to the enemy ninjas. The villages surrendered after such an attack. 10,000 ninjas dead in just a few minutes. That's something that made them fear and not risk a long-term war in which many more ninjas would die," Sakura said beside the black-haired boy. It's just that I don't understand how he got so strong in such a short time, Sasuke said, annoyed. From what Neji told me, Naruto told Hinata that when he left Konoha, he traveled the world, trained in many places, and did so without rest. He trained again and learned everything he could, and that's how he became stronger, Tenten said, looking at the group. Well, that was great training. We couldn't even touch him, Kiba said, annoyed. That means he's even stronger, Sai said, sounding a bit serious. What are you talking about? Chuji said, stopping eating a bag of potato chips and looking at the young man. It's simple. Considering the terrible strength he used when he fought Akatsuki and what he did to the enemy ninjas or to us in that fight, it's easy to deduce that he wasn't fighting seriously. He must have even more hidden power. Besides, he never gives up, so his true powers must be unimaginable, Sai said, looking seriously at the group before smiling. That was a possibility I had already considered. And yes, it's most likely. I've never been able to determine Naruto's true strength. That's something beyond all logic, Shikamaru said, very seriously and scratching his head. Thank goodness he was on our side. I don't even want to imagine what would happen if he turned against us, Ino said very seriously. That would be catastrophic, Shino said, turning away from the window and looking at the group. And most importantly, no one should try to hurt his daughter. Temari told me he's very overprotective of her, and besides, she's hiding several secrets that make her a formidable rival. If you run into her, you'd better run or die, Shikamaru thought, a little seriously. At that moment in Ichikaris Ramen's, the Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi and his little daughter were eating, or rather devouring, a large amount of their favorite dishes. It was at that moment that a young woman with bluish-black hair entered the establishment, attracting the attention of the customers. Hinata-chan, Shizuma said, getting down from the chair and running to hug the young girl. The young man with two-toned hair followed the little girl, but this time he kissed her on the lips, leaving her completely blushing and embarrassed. The three of them sat down in one of the chairs in the restaurant while the owner and his daughter prepared another extra order of dishes for their customers. What happened? Naruto asked, a little worried. My father said yes, Hinata said, sounding a little more cheerful. That's good, Naruto said, sighing in relief. I still think you should have let me go talk to him personally instead of going alone, he said, looking at the Hyuga girl. No problem, he understood and said I could go with you. That he would leave Neji and Hanabi as the clan leaders, Hinata said, smiling slightly. When can we leave? I miss Grandpa, Shizuma said, looking at her father. Well, I think it'll be tomorrow, at least that's what Shizune-chan told me, Naruto said, a little thoughtfully. I already have my bags packed, Hinata said, looking at the young father. The two kissed again while the little girl and the staff watched. After finishing their meal, the three of them went for a walk through the village, attracting the attention of all the inhabitants who stared at them. As they were walking, they ran into Sasuke and Sakura who were going in the opposite direction. Hello Sasuke-chan, Naruto said in a somewhat mocking tone, which provoked an angry glare from the black-haired boy. I don't know how you got stronger, but I won't let it go. I'm going to train and become stronger than you, you'll see. Sasuke said, looking at the Jinchuriki who was watching him with amusement. You can, but I don't think you can do it, Naruto said, smiling sinisterly. I won't let you surpass me, you'll see. I am an Uchiha and I will become stronger than you, Sasuke said, staring intently at the blue-eyed man. Uchiha, Shizuma said, looking at the dark-haired man. You have the Sharingan, right? He said, moving a little closer to the dark-haired man, under the watchful gaze of the blonde, who smiled with a hint of malice. Yes, that's right, look, Sasuke said, activating the Sharingan, which caused his eyes to turn reddish while 3 tomo formed around his pupils. That's right, look Dad, he has the Sharingan too, Shizuma said, looking at her father, a little excited. Me too. Sakura, Sasuke, and Hinata thought at the same time. Look, Shizuma said, closing his eyes. When he opened them, they showed red eyes with the same 3 tomo as the black-haired man's eyes, an unmistakable sign of a complete Sharingan in its normal form. No, it's not possible, Sasuke said in a state of complete shock upon seeing the girl's eyes. Actually, it is. I was surprised too when I learned that there are still small groups of Uchiha descendants who, although they don't carry the surname, still have the Sharingan in their blood. Shizuma's grandmother was an Uchiha, and my late wife, although not a ninja, also had the Sharingan. It's just that her body was very weak and she couldn't fight, Naruto said, a little serious, looking at the group that was watching him attentively. There are more Uchiha alive, Sasuke said, a little dismayed. Several. In the village where I live, there are about 30 or so, said Naruto as the little girl walked beside him and deactivated her Sharingan. I can understand that there might be some Sharingan users still alive. I know that not all the Uchiha came to Konoha when it was formed, but I don't understand how that girl, at such a young age, has already awakened the Sharingan and taken it to the 3rd level. Who is she, really? Sasuke thought, staring intently at the girl. Suddenly, the dark-haired man activated his Sharingan and stared intently at the little girl. Upon seeing her chakra channels, he was so dismayed that his eyes deactivated, and he was stunned by what he saw. Goodbye, said Naruto, walking alongside his daughter and his girlfriend. Sasuke-kun, what happened? Sakura said, approaching the dark-haired boy who seemed very confused and surprised. That girl. Her. What is she? Sasuke said, very surprised and without reacting. The day passed quickly and the next morning Naruto, who had already collected his reward, was at the village gate with his daughter, waiting for Hinata to arrive. In the distance, the young woman appeared with her sister and cousin, who were helping her with some suitcases. After a short farewell, the three set off for the land of waterfalls and the village where Naruto and Shizuma lived. After a couple of days of travel, during which they rested at some inns along the way, they arrived at the village of waterfalls. They headed towards a mountain where a large temple could be seen at the top. They climbed a long staircase until, upon reaching the top, they saw a somewhat stout and slightly bald man dressed as a monk, using a broom to clean a stone path that led to the temple. Grandpa! Shizuma exclaimed, running excitedly towards the man who smiled upon seeing her and bent down to receive the little girl. Shizuma-chan, it's so good to see you. Where were you? Did something happen to you? Did your inconsiderate father put you in danger? Said the old man, caressing the little girl's face. Hey, father-in-law, what kind of opinion do you have of me? Naruto said, approaching the man who looked at him and was surprised to see Hinata. Oh, hi, said Hinata from behind the blue-eyed boy. Hello, Naruto, who is this girl? Kyosuke said, staring intently at the Hyuga girl. Shizuma, you can take Hinata-chan to your room. I need to talk to your grandfather alone, Naruto said, looking at the little girl. Yes, Shizuma said, running to Hyuga and taking her hand. Come, I'll show you my room, she said excitedly as they both entered the temple. Hinata watched as the two men talked for a bit and then entered what appeared to be a kind of dojo. Afterwards, they went to the little girl's room where there were many stuffed animals and dolls. She also saw a picture frame with a photo of Naruto and a very beautiful woman with black hair. That was my mom. Dad and Grandpa all told me she was a very good person, Shizuma said, approaching the girl. Do you think Naruto-kun has a problem with your grandfather? Hinata asked, a little worried. Don't worry about it. They're always fighting amongst themselves about everything. Don't worry, my grandpa is very kind, Shizuma said, looking at the Hyuga girl. At that moment in the dojo, Naruto and the man in front of him stared at each other seriously without blinking or anything. So you and that girl want to live here together? Kyosuke said, sounding a bit serious. Yes, that's right, Naruto said very seriously. Well, it's been several years since my daughter left us. I suppose it was time for you to decide to start a new life with someone else, Kyosuke said, a little thoughtful. I swear I haven't forgotten Hikaru-chan and I never will. I still love her and I always will, because every time I see Shizuma I remember her. I just love Hinata-chan too and I want to be with her. I'm not trying to replace her because that's impossible. But I want Shizuma to know a mother's love and I know Hinata-chan is capable of that. She's a wonderful person and she's grown fond of Shizuma, Naruto said very seriously. I understand, and don't worry, I don't object to your relationship. I know you sincerely loved my daughter. You were by her side until the day she died, and even though you knew she was going to die young, you married her and made her happy until the very end. It's time for you to move on with your life. Besides, you're right about one thing. Shizuma needs to know what a mother's love is, and that's something neither of you can do. And if she's as good as you say, I'm sure she'll make a better person and change that mischievous streak she inherited from you, Kyosuke said, chuckling slightly. Hey, Naruto said, annoyed. The days passed in this way, and before they knew it, almost 2 months had gone by since the young couple had moved into the temple. In one of the rooms, a young woman began to get up. Opening her eyes, she brushed aside a lock of hair that had fallen across her face and looked at the place where she had slept. Right beside her was her beloved. She was resting peacefully beside him, and despite everything that had already happened between them, she still couldn't help but blush whenever she woke up like this. Even more so when she remembered the heartfelt conversation they had shared the previous night. Looking around the room, she smiled softly, realizing that she and Naruto had fallen asleep together after spending the evening talking. She still couldn't believe what was happening. In just one more month, she and her beloved Naruto would finally get married. What had been a childhood and teenage dream was finally coming true. Hinata tried to get up to pick up a kimono that was next to the bed, but Naruto gently took her hand, smiled at her, and gave her an affectionate kiss, making Hinata blush. Making the young woman blush. Naru, Hinata said nervously, trying to hide her embarrassment. So what? You were much more confident last night, Naruto said with a playful smile before giving her a gentle kiss. But, Shizuma-chan, I'm going to take you to pick flowers in the morning, and it's already time, Hinata said, trying to calm her nervousness as Naruto continued teasing her playfully. All right, then. But tonight, we'll continue our plans, Naruto said with a playful smile. Why yes, Hinata said, blushing slightly, as the young man let her stand up but without taking his eyes off her. Naruto-sama, said a woman's voice from the doorway of the room. There's someone looking for you. They're at the temple and want to speak with you personally, the woman said without opening the door. I'll be right there, said Naruto, getting out of bed. The blue-eyed man quickly got ready, kissed the young woman goodbye, and left for the temple where a man in very elegant clothes and with a rather thick suitcase was waiting for him. You are Naruto Uzumaki, the man said upon seeing the former Konoha ninja. That's right. Who are you? Naruto said, looking at the man in front of him. My name is Takashi Amono. I'm a jewelry merchant and I've been told you're a great bodyguard. I need to transport some important merchandise to the land of the Firefly and I'd like to use your services. I'm willing to pay you whatever you ask, Takashi said, staring intently at the blonde man. When would the mission be? Naruto asked, looking at the man. The ship is ready to depart. All that's left is for you to go and that's it, Takashi said very seriously. Okay, I'll tell you how much my pay will be when the mission is over, Naruto said, sounding a bit serious. Very well, I'll be waiting for you at the port, Takashi said as he bowed and left. An escort mission, nothing complicated, Naruto thought as he went to his room. After half an hour, the young man left the temple, bidding farewell to his fiancée and her daughter, while her grandfather told him not to do anything reckless. The young mercenary reached the port where the ship was about to set sail, boarded it, and sat in a chair as his journey began. When the ship disappeared from the port, a man who was watching it reached a telephone and dialed a number. Sir, the plan worked, they've just left, the man said, waiting to hear the voice of the person he was speaking to. Very well, you know what you have to do, said a man's voice on the other end of the phone line. Yes, said the man, hanging up the phone and walking to a house in the middle of the village. Upon entering, several people dressed in black robes and animal masks stared at him. Danzu-sama has already given the order. We have to capture Shizuma Uzumaki and take her directly to Konoha, the man said, looking at the others. The ninjas sped off to the temple and upon arrival hid while watching Hinata and Shizuma go out to collect some flowers. They signaled to each other as they positioned themselves around the area where the young woman and the little girl were. Meanwhile in Konoha, in a building, the leader of the root division of the Ambu was looking at some papers. I'll have that brat in my hands very soon. If this Uzumaki doesn't want anything bad to happen to her, she'll have to do everything I say. With that weapon in my hands, not only will Konoha be mine, but the whole world, Danzu thought as he began to laugh. The young woman with bluish-black hair and eyes as white as the moon and the little girl with black and blonde hair and dark blue eyes were in a field of flowers picking some of the flowers to take to the temple. There were only a few days left before an important ceremony in the waterfall village, and the village leader wanted it to be held in the temple. A large number of people were expected, including several influential people, so the decorations had to be impeccable. Hinata picked up a rose from the ground when she sensed something was wrong, stealthily activating her Byakugan only to see a large number of ninjas completely surrounding them. I looked closely at the little girl who seemed not to have noticed what was happening. I approached her to help her pick a flower while taking advantage of the fact that her long hair helped to hide her activated Dojutsu. Once she was by her side, she positioned herself at her level while whispering almost inaudible words that she was sure she would hear. Shizuma, we need to get to the temple quickly, so let's leave as fast as possible, Hinata whispered softly. The blonde with black streaks nodded slightly and stood up from the ground where she was leaning. In one swift movement, the Hyuga grabbed the little girl and dashed off towards the temple. The Anbus, realizing they had been discovered, launched a series of kunai and shuriken at them. The older woman began to spin in the air with the girl in her arms, and a blue aura surrounded them, forming a kind of chakra sphere that repelled the thrown weapons. He fell to the ground and continued his run. He had to get the little girl to safety and then he would face the attackers. His plan was thwarted when at least 10 hooded figures blocked his escape route. She stopped dead in her tracks, only to see, thanks to her blood technique, at least 20 more hooded figures appear behind her. She could clearly see at least 15 more hidden among the trees. Because of the large amount of chakra they possessed and their positions, it was easy to guess that they were not simple ninjas but rather elites. "Shizuma, go and hide, I'll take care of them," Hinata said, watching the enemy ninjas intently. "I'll help you," Shizuma said decisively. "It's very dangerous, go and hide," Hinata said, looking at the little girl. "No, Dad trained me and I'm very strong, let me help you," Shizuma said as he activated his Sharingan, showing great determination. The Hyuga said nothing and stood back to back with the girl as enemy ninjas surrounded them. She couldn't lose. She wouldn't allow anyone to hurt the little girl. Several ninjas rushed at them. Haki Haiku Niju Hansho, Heavenly Circle, 128 divination points, said Hinata as she got into position to perform the technique. The first 5 hooded figures who fell to the ground were struck by the gentle fist technique right in the heart and other parts of their bodies, while the other 3 who accompanied them in the attack were burned by a powerful fire technique that came out of the Uzumaki's mouth. Other ninjas jumped towards the older one with some swords that she did not miss thanks to the Byakugan. Shogo Hak Rokuyu Yonshu, 8 seals, 64 divine strikes. Hinata said as she began to rapidly move her hands in circles around herself and the girl while threads of chakra came out of the palms of her hands. A kind of sphere quickly formed and the Anbus swords were completely shattered into pieces without leaving a trace upon contact with the technique. When the girl tried to reverse a series of seals, it caught the attention of the masked men. "Kaiten, Zukahoku, fire cannon," said Shizuma as a powerful blast of flames shot towards them, incinerating them instantly. The other ninjas launched themselves at the women who were preparing to continue the battle. "Kaiten Gokakyu no Jutsu, fire release, great fireball technique," Shizuma said as he launched a large fireball towards his opponents. They dodged her only to see her make other seals. A great dragon-shaped flame shot out towards them, eliminating them instantly, while Hinata launched herself at another group and hit them with her gentle fist using her arms and legs. From a safe distance a silhouette watched the battle, waiting for the opportune moment to act. The Hyuga and the Uzumaki fought fiercely and the Anbu could not stand up to them. The little girl's ranged attacks were deadly accurate and the few who managed to get close were quickly finished off by the pearl-eyed girl's lethal taijutsu. The bad thing was that the ninjas kept appearing and the original 45 were now close to 100. Shizuma made a series of seals and turned into a beam of light, throwing fireballs everywhere and burning several enemies. Some of the ninjas threw kunai with explosive seals that he barely managed to dodge, while Hinata fought against a dozen ninjas. Seeing that the situation was now the right one, the observer launched the attack. After a few days, a group of hooded figures entered the village of Konoha through a secret passage that led them directly to the base of the Anbu division leader. Danzu received them and saw how one of them brought what he was looking for, Shizuma Uzumaki, completely gagged and chained, which made it impossible for her to move. Perfect. It was a good idea to tell that jewelry merchant about Uzumaki. By hiring him for the job, he cleared the way for me to capture this girl. With her, her father will obey all my orders, Danzu said, lifting the little girl's face. She glared at him angrily and then flashed a malicious smile as she burst into a cloud of smoke. Danzu stepped back somewhat dismayed as all the hooded figures disappeared, leaving only 2. The first removed his cloak and mask, revealing the Kyuubi Jinchuriki in front of him, while the second exploded in a small burst of smoke, revealing Shizuma with a malicious smile. But how? Said Danzu, looking at the 2 of them. Using an innocent person as bait to lure me out of the house was a good idea, but I detected the Anbus sent before I even boarded the ship. I know everyone in the village and identified them immediately. Besides, I always leave a shadow clone watching over my daughter. Attacking her on my own turf was stupid, Naruto said mockingly. Damn it, Danzu said, trying to back away. You know, you and I have unfinished business. Anyone who tries to harm my family will die. Shizuma, let Kokoro out, Naruto said, looking at the little girl. Yes, Shizuma said, looking at her father. The little girl looked at the dark-haired man who was staring at her. Her hair turned completely red and grew longer. She leaned forward until her hands touched the ground. Her fingernails turned red and became sharp claws. A kind of orange fur covered her skin. She lifted her face, revealing bright red irises with elongated pupils. From her dress sprouted a multitude of tails, 9 in total. More than a Jinchuriki or a Biju, her appearance was closer to that of a werewolf, or in this case, a wolf girl. "I can finally go out," said Shizuma in a voice that was a mixture of the sweet voice of the girl and another that sounded like that of some beast. "What the hell?" said Danzu, looking at the girl in beast form. "You wanted my daughter. Well then I'll let her be the one to kill you," Naruto said, smiling sinisterly. "What is she?" Danzu said, watching as the creature stared at him with such bloodlust that it was disturbing. "If you're so eager to know, I'll tell you. Shizuma isn't exactly human. To be honest, you could say she has 3 parents, her mother, me, and Kyuubi. She inherited the Sharingan from her mother, and she also inherited my status as a Jinchuriki, only in her case it was a little different. Since she doesn't have a seal, the 2 souls share the body without suppressing each other's. Another thing is her body. Being born with such a large amount of chakra, her body evolved in a way that could completely withstand it. So one day her powers will surpass mine. She's half human and half Biju. Cool, right?" Naruto said as he left the room. "Kokoro," he called, catching the girl's attention. "Yes, father," Kokoro said, looking at the young man with blue eyes. "Make him suffer for trying to hurt you and your sister," Naruto said, leaving the room. "Yes," Kokoro said, licking her lips as she approached the terrified man. A large amount of red chakra emanating from her. A series of heart-wrenching screams were heard inside the room as the young man kept his eyes closed, checking his senses in case someone was approaching. Finally, the door to the room opened and the girl came out, still in her animal form. Naruto approached her and cleaned the blood that was running from the little girl's mouth and hands. "Good job, Kokoro. Kyuubi is very proud," Naruto said, smiling. "Thank you, father," Kokoro said as she began to return to normal. What happened?" Shizuma said as she regained consciousness. "Don't worry, your sister already took care of it. Let's go," said Naruto, picking up the little girl and speeding out of the village like a flash of light. In a few seconds they arrived at the waterfall village where a beautiful young woman with pearly eyes was anxiously waiting for them outside the temple. "Naruto-kun, Shizuma-chan," Hinata said with a big smile when she saw them. "Where did you take Shizuma this morning?" Kyosuke asked, looking at the blue-eyed man. "Let's go for a walk," Naruto said calmly. The young man looked at the Hyuga who was hugging the little girl and approached them. Gently holding the young woman's face, Naruto gave her an affectionate kiss, leaving Hinata smiling shyly. "I'll wait for you in the room," Naruto said as he entered the temple. Hinata blushed completely and smiled at the little girl who was looking at her intrigued. A few days later, a grand wedding took place. Some ninjas from Konoha, including Kurenai, Shino, Kiba, Neji, Tenten, Lee, Gari, who was crying, Hanabi, Hayashi, Tsunade, Shizune, Iruka, Konohamaru, Udon, Mogi, Shikamaru, Temari, Gara, Kankuro, Aino, Chuji, Kakashi, Sakura, Sasuke, various personalities from the village hidden in the waterfall, and many villagers and ninjas from the waterfall village were present. The wedding was a complete success and all the guests were having a great time. Sasuke, for his part, was talking with several people who were Uchiha by blood but not by surname and possessed the Sharingan. The others were drinking and talking with everyone while the bride and groom went to enjoy a quiet moment together. At the top of the temple, the sky could be clearly seen showing a sunset. There were Naruto and his wife Hinata, embracing, looking at the landscape and enjoying each other's company. "I dreamed about this day so many times," Hinata said, resting her head on her now husband's shoulder. "Are you happy?" Naruto said, staring at her intently. "This is the happiest day of my entire life," Hinata said, kissing the young man. "Same here," Naruto said, giving her a loving kiss. Time passed and almost 15 years later a young woman with black hair bearing the emblem of the waterfall village was running towards the training field. She couldn't have been more than 14 or 15 years old. Her hair was long and straight, and her deep black eyes gazed at the landscape blurred by her speed until she reached a clearing where 3 figures awaited her. "You're late," said a man with short silver hair bearing the symbol of the same village. Beside her were 2 young men, one with red hair and blue eyes who looked at her mockingly, and another with blonde hair who had his eyes closed and had 3 whisker-shaped marks on each of his cheeks. She opened her eyes, revealing white irises without pupils, and her expression was somewhat serious. "Since we're all here, we can go to Suna right now," said the blonde man with pearly eyes, sounding somewhat annoyed. "What's wrong, Jiraiya-kun? Do you really want to see your little sister that badly?" the redhead said mockingly. "Takato, I'm not in the mood today," Jiraiya said as his eyes briefly turned red and elongated black pupils appeared. The redhead stepped back somewhat frightened by the bored look of his sensei and the blushing kunoichi who had just arrived. "Jiraiya-kun, we know today is a very important day for your older sister. But calm down, we have to wait for your parents, Hikari," said the silver-haired man, somewhat seriously. At that moment a little girl appeared wearing the headband of the waterfall village, although she couldn't have been more than 8 years old. Her hair was bluish-black, but her eyes were white and she had 3 marks on her cheeks. "Little brother," Hikari said, jumping into the blonde boy's arms. "Have you finished your classes yet?" Jiraiya said, looking at the little girl. "Yes," Hikari said, very excitedly. "Hello," said the voice of a man approaching a woman. They both must have been almost 40 years old, but their appearances didn't suggest it. She didn't look more than 30 or maybe even younger, and he looked almost the same. "Naruto-sama, Hinata-sama, we were waiting for you," said the silver-haired man, looking at the couple. "Sorry, Hikari-chan's classes ran really long," said Naruto, scratching his head. "Takashi-san, please forgive us," Hinata said in a rather respectful tone of voice. "No problem," Takashi said, sounding a little embarrassed. "Shizuka just arrived too, so it's fine." He looked at the young woman, who blushed. "We can leave now. In 2 hours Shizuma will be officially appointed as the new Kazekage," Jiraiya said, sounding somewhat desperate. Jiraiya-kun, calm down, you'll see we'll get there. We'll get there on time," Shizuka said, a little nervous and blushing. "You're right, Shizu-chan," Jiraiya said, smiling at the young woman who lowered her head as her face turned completely red. "Your face is red. Are you sick?" Jiraiya said, approaching the young woman and touching her forehead as she felt she might faint at any moment. The redhead looked at them slightly annoyed, and the silver-haired one just looked at the sky. The boys' parents looked at each other for a few seconds while laughing at the sight of the little girl who was looking at them curiously. After the Kyuubi Jinchuriki performed a series of seals, a kind of hole was created in front of them. He entered first, followed by Hinata, the white-eyed ones, and the rest of the ninjas. Upon emerging on the other side, they found themselves in Tsunagakure no Soto and went to where there was a large crowd of people. As soon as they saw them, everyone fell silent as they passed by, and the silence was only broken by the murmurs of a few. "Are they them?" said one who was staring at them intently. "Yes, they are from the Uzumaki clan," said another man beside him. "Are they really that strong?" said a third person who joined the conversation. "They are invincible," the second one said very seriously. "That's why the Kazekage is from that clan," the first one said, somewhat intrigued. "That's right, she's incredibly powerful. She can use all the elements at once and with her inexhaustible chakra reserves she never gets tired. She's the perfect kunoichi. Plus she's very pretty," the second one said with a smile. "There are only 5 of them in that clan. But if they keep this up, soon everyone will fear the name of the Uzumaki clan, the most powerful clan in the world," said a man behind them. "Really?" said the third one, very curious. "Yes, their father and clan leader is the leader of the village hidden in the waterfall. And it was thanks to him that the village gained recognition and is now the 6th ninja village. He is the Jinchuriki of the Nine Tails and was the one who eliminated the Akatsuki ninjas. A few years ago, he single-handedly ended the war that was about to break out between the villages. There's the new Kazekage, who is said to be the most powerful woman in the world. The second son is an elite jounin at only 14 years old, and the youngest, who I think is 8 years old, is already a chunin. I also heard that she's taking the jounin exam," said the fourth of the group, very seriously. The murmurs stopped when, on top of the tower with the symbol of the wind, a young woman with golden hair streaked with black appeared before the entire village, her dark blue eyes looking at everyone with a big smile. She had a striking and confident appearance, perfectly reflecting her strength and leadership, the perfect blend of beauty and power, as many said. She wore a white cloak and a white and blue hat. "From this moment on, I, Shizuma Uzumaki, am the new Kazekage of Suna, and I will protect this village and its inhabitants with my life." "That is a promise," Shizuma said, to which everyone began to shout and cheer. End. So guys, this is where our story comes to an end. Make sure to like the video and definitely show some hype and support. I hope you enjoyed listening to this story. Let me know in the comments how you liked it, what you think was missing, and what kind of powerful or fantastic Naruto story you'd like to hear next. Also, tell me what kind of story you want and what title you'd like me to cover. That's it for today, guys. I'll see you in the next video.